The college baseball experience Big 12 conference season preview episode on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up, and when you do, sign up with the promo code TCESGPN to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Edge Boost. Earn up to $750 per month on your sports gambling transactions. Go to edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. And remember, as always, folks, to let it ride.
This is Brock Purdy from Iowa State, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride.
Yes. Woo! Welcome to the college baseball experience, Big 12 conference preview edition. It's the Big 12. Classic Dan Hawkins line. YouTube.com/the college experience. Jump on over there, hit that like and subscribe button. And hopefully you've checked out our whole preview series. We had the ACC conference preview that's been out for a few weeks. Same with the SEC conference preview, which dropped a week ago today. Folks, we are 16 days away from opening day in college baseball, serving you some heartbreaking news as we have opening day on Valentine's Day. I mean, a good time to break up with your gal right now, so you don't have to pay for the flowers. You don't have to pay for all the other shit. You can get back together after Omaha. All right. Summer, just wait for the summer months. All right. Folks, if you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, that's a good question. My name is Colby Database Dan, AKA Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
He's the kind of guy that would drink a gallon of gasoline so he could piss in your campfire. You could drop this guy off at the Arctic Circle wearing a pair of bikini underwear without his toothbrush, and tomorrow afternoon he's going to show up at your poolside with $1 million smile and a fistful of pesos.
Got that $1 million smile. Fistful of pesos are coming after the season begins. All right, $1 million smile's been there when I know we're 16 days away. I am joined by my co-host. He's been the heartbeat of the college baseball. He has been the heartbeat of the college baseball experience over the years. He's also the man on the boards in college basketball and college football experience podcast. Give it up for the great Noah Bieniek. How are you, man?
What's going on, Colby? Can't wait to jump in today. Big 12 preview. Very excited for this as we have 3 new teams into the conference. The whole conference realignment thing, I think, hit the Big 12 the most. We'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah, and we're also joined by third man in the booth, but really they're the talent. I'm just here for my good looks. Give it up for the host of the Breaking Bet podcast, which you should be checking out, and also former betting analyst for NBC Sports. Give it up for Johnny V. How are you, man? Good to see you again.
What's going on, boys? I'm really enjoying doing this every Wednesday. I look forward to it each week. When we wrap up this podcast on a Wednesday night, I got to wait a whole week to see you guys to break down the next conference. No longer the Big 12, man. I think they need to update that name. It's going to be the Big 14 now. And in regards to the Valentine's Day, I think I said it a couple weeks ago. You're talking about breaking up with your girlfriend, bro. You know what I'm doing on Valentine's Day? I'm setting myself a dozen roses and a box of chocolates for the occasion. And then I'm watching college baseball from noon to midnight, no interruptions. I might take off of work. I'm going radio silent. Nobody bothers me.
I just hope the guy delivering the flowers doesn't check saying, "Wait, dude, you're sending this to yourself." And then you just got to say, "Hey, here's your lock for the day. All right, ECU over George Mason, whatever." Yeah, I'm with you, man. And let's just talk about, before we dive into these teams, the Big 12. All these conference realignment things are just gigantic news. It doesn't matter the sport, I feel like, but you have,
and it's the one true reason why all these episodes, these conference previews, get 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I saw some people comment. It's like, you guys did a solid 3 hours on the SEC. We could have gone longer. Longer. Don't worry. But look, a few years back, the Big 12 only had 10 teams. Then for a little bit, it had 12. Now in football, it's at 16. But in baseball, we're at 14 because Iowa State doesn't field a baseball team. Colorado, which you have Deion Sanders as your football coach, and you have Robert Redford, used to play baseball for the Colorado Buffaloes back in the, 200 years ago. I feel like he's still alive, right? The Natural, though, boy wonder,
don't
right?
Do this again, Colby.
Yeah,
we don't.
Damn it,
Colby.
I'm just saying, you would think they would be able to Deion can't make a phone call and get the baseball team going. What's going on here?
He's done. He's not coming. He's done. He's done. Once the kids are done, that's it. Yeah. Ship it, brother. Ship it.
So we got 14 teams, but you lose Texas and Oklahoma, which have been powers over the years. I remember Roger Clemens back in the day with the Texas Longhorns. Bieniek, how do you define this conference now? And how would you even rank it as well, like as a conference in college baseball?
Well, they lost their 2024 regular season champion, and they lost the bluest of blue bloods in Texas. So the regular season champion one was Oklahoma there. Arizona and Arizona State are very, very good additions if you're going to lose two big brands like that. But you need Arizona State to get back to, being a national brand for baseball one. We'll see how that goes this season. But Kansas State made a super regional last year. TCU made a super regional. They went to Omaha in 2023. West Virginia made a super regional last year. I think that the reports of the Big 12's demise in baseball were a little overblown last year, and there might be new opportunity for a couple of these programs that had kind of been stiff-armed from the top of the conference standings for years.
All right, Johnny V, I'm curious if you agree with that, but I would just like your take on overall this brand new conference in a way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like it's hard on a week to week trying to predict the winners of these conferences because there's a lot of talent, but it's not consistent. And when you lose Texas and Oklahoma, for the last few years, I personally felt regular season at least, the power in this conference was Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. Now you'd get in a mix here. Maybe TCU could go on a little bit of a run. They got some juice. Texas Tech earlier in the decade, in the late 2010s, that was a team that was not only contending for this conference, but they were in the mix for Omaha and beyond. West Virginia had some juice. So there's some teams that are pretty good, but now you're removing those two teams. And yeah, like Noah said, you're going to be calling on Arizona State to be, kind of regaining that form that they had in the Pac-12 and bringing it over here. I think bringing in a handful of Pac-12 teams, it provides a lot of juice and a lot of excitement. And while we're still not sure what we're going to get on a week-to-week basis for those series, I think futures-wise, looking at this preseason and looking at this, what you're going to bet in terms of a conference winner, it makes things interesting because now the pool is opened up. We're going to get into Oklahoma State a little bit more, but they've been the favorite since the Open, and they're probably one of the most respected favorites, which I don't agree with. They're 3-1. One in terms of the power conferences. I think only Oregon's a shorter favorite than them at 2-1. So Oklahoma State being 3-1 with a lot of other juice in the Big 12, I'm not sure I agree with that, and that's why we have a show like this to talk a little bit more about it.
Johnny showing his hand a little bit. I'll do it too. It sounds like we might have the same champ if we're not picking Oklahoma State.
I didn't show my hand. I didn't show my hand. I just talked about it.
I mean, if you were saying you didn't agree with Oklahoma State being the favorite, I think I know where you might be going then. Let's get into it.
And it should be noted that Utah, the Utes,
let's not leave the Utes behind here.
they're the only team in the conference that we just have no odds. Vegas, for some reason,
specifically, just
forgot. We got no odds on the Utes, so something to monitor. Hopefully, that will change in the coming days. But let's jump into this. If you're a first time listener, we go alphabetically. We're not going by our projections. We are just going by the alphabet, which is always a challenge for me. But I believe Arizona is the first school. The Arizona Wildcats, 36-23 season ago, 20-10 in the Pac-12. They won the Pac-12 for Chip Hale in his third season there. He's 108-74 overall. They did lose some guys. Clark Candiotti's gone. Jackson Kent, Cam Walty, Tony Pluta. Emilio Corona, all gone. They go out though. They bring in a bunch of kind of obscure transfers. Delta College in California. Dominic Rodriguez coming in. Aaron Walton from the Sanford Bulldogs. Ethan Guerrera from Paris, Texas Junior College. Colin McKinney from Baylor. Christian Coppola from the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, and then a D3 transfer from Wisconsin Whitewater. In Michael Hilker, and they brought in Jack Berg from Tacoma Community College. And they return. A lot of the batting lineup seems to be back. But Bieniek, your thoughts on these Arizona? Actually, I got a little song for you. There we go. W-I-L-D Cats. W-I-L-D Wildcats. Yeah, it's an Arizona Wildcat theme song. You can get that on iTunes. Bieniek, your thoughts on these Arizona Wildcats?
Last preseason, I was cautious with how much I wanted to like this team. We have to remember last year, this was a young position player group, brand new pitching staff with new coaches at the front of that. Two big time draft prospects in Brendan Summerhill and Mason White return here for the Wildcats with a total of 7 of 9 starters in the position player lineup coming back from a regular season winning Pac-12 team. So that's a pretty damn good place to start. Once again, the Wildcats do have to rebuild that pitching staff, like I mentioned, but I believe in Chip Hale, World Series winning assistant manager for the Washington Nationals, also former hitting coach for the Detroit Tigers. That was back when my Tigers offense used to be good. The reason why I wanted to like this team last year was because this place is a launch pad. These offenses for Arizona, whether it's unproven or not, they always hit. So I knew I could bank on that offense, but I had no idea what the pitching would provide. And Chip Hale, he admired what Wake Forest had done in their pitching lab inside a shoebox ballpark where it's 300 down the left field line, 305 down the right. And he said, if they have a top 5 ERA in the country, why can't we have a good pitching staff inside our launch pad of a ballpark? So he went out and got Kevin Vance and John DeRuin to supervise Arizona's new pitching lab. And in year 1, the pitching gang for Arizona ranked 21st nationally in ERA. And I say all of this to say that I'm all in on Arizona again this year. I'm aware that there are a lot of new pieces on the bump, but this is the same situation for the pitching staff as it was last year. And there are some good gambles in this transfer group. I love Christian Coppola. He had a great freshman year with Rutgers. He pitched for the USA Collegiate National Team that offseason and then just had a sophomore slump kind of season. He relocates himself to this place that should optimize him for his junior year in draft season. And Baylor transfer Colin McKinney is a more steady option than Coppola. Coppola could be all over the place. Who knows? The ceiling's just so high with him. But McKinney's the steady hand probably going to get the ball on Friday nights. And he's got Big 12 experience already after his freshman year last year. And I think Michael Hilker is going to be an important piece on this staff too. He dominated in the D3 ranks with a big-time fastball, more than 20 inches of induced vert, which resulted in a 2.07 ERA, 106 strikeouts, and only 78.1 innings. Casey Hintz had a good summer in the Cape and is probably the Wildcats' leverage arm out of the pen. Outside of those 4 arms, those are the ones that I really believe in. There are some more question marks, but again, I have faith in Hale and the staff building something in Tucson, and I think they are a Big 12 title contender this year.
Yeah, Johnny, you share the same sentiment with the Arizona Wildcats?
I do. Arizona was a little down on last year because, first of all, I was so high on Oregon State. Oregon State was one of my perennial College World Series winners in that portfolio I had. Arizona, to me, last year was a team that, listen, there's going to be opportunities to bet them throughout the season, and then ultimately, I won a 4-1 or a plus 410 ticket on them to win the Pac-12 tournament. And listen, Arizona is fun to watch, man. They are death by 1,000 cuts on offense. Their lineup wasn't as good last year as it was in recent years, but this team, like Noah said, still hits. Brendan Summerhill, fantastic player. And the thing is, like, statistically, he doesn't jump. He hasn't jumped off the page yet. This is a guy who's a lot better than what his stats dictate. And I feel like this could be the year he really, takes hold and kind of goes on a national stage, especially now that they're going to have a lot of big time matchups. They're going to get a lot of television time, especially early in the year. They got the Shriners Classic where they're going to face a good litmus test with like Texas A&M and a couple other teams that are pretty noteworthy. We'll go through the schedule in a minute, but Mason White is the guy that I'm really interested in. I drafted him in our fantasy league for college baseball a few weeks ago. The one bugaboo about Mason White is the egregious strikeouts. Think Vance Honeycutt. Kid's got pop. Kid can hit, but he has too much swing and miss. He struck out over 80 times last year. So if he can kind of bring that back and cut those strikeouts by, I would say, even 40%, this is a guy who's definitely, because of his shortstop prowess, is going to be a first rounder. I think Summerhill's a little bit more consistent, but listen, Arizona's always going to be able to hit. That's their forte. Now you have 2 stars in the middle of that lineup that's commanding an offense that's just always going to find players to contribute. Like last year, the question I had was on the mound, but now it's an even bigger problem because you literally lost your entire weekend rotation. And honestly, there weren't too many teams more than Arizona that had 3 reliable weekend guys every single time out there. You lose Clark Candiotti, Cam Walty, and Jackson Kent. So now you have to rebuild it through the
Candiotti. Let me interrupt you. Candiotti, Wichita State, Kent out of nowhere. Cam Walty was the 4th starter the year before. I think
Kent was a reliever the year before, 23, I think.
He was a first-time starter last year.
Yeah, so I think he was a reliever. He was a reliever the year before. So basically, you lose your whole weekend rotation. I mean, the good thing is there's a precedent for them to go out into the portal and rebuild their pitching staff. Now, based on what these guys have done at their previous school, again, we can kind of consider this a high-variance pitching staff. So considering how well the offense can hit, you would think, at least for the time being, to start off the season, Arizona's pitching has to probably be halfway decent for the Wildcats to have a really good chance. The reason why I don't have Arizona as the conference winner, I think they will be a player. I don't like them at 4-1, considering the big question marks at pitching. Just because you did it last year doesn't mean it's going to replicate. You look at Arizona last year, the amount of talent they had, granted, they got a brutal draw in their region. They had one of the most exciting regions, Dallas Baptist, Grand Canyon, and West Virginia. I think Arizona is going to be a very good team this year. They're going to be a team I'm going to look forward to betting when I get a little bit more of a sample size on them. But 4-1 right now, joining a new conference, I just don't know if that's something that I'd be willing to make. And real quick, because I like to do this, look at their schedule. Shriners Classic to start. They get Ole Miss, Clemson, Louisville. Good litmus test. They have a series with San Diego, second to last week of February. Then they get the Astros Foundation College Classic. This is really where I want to see their juice this year. They get Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Tennessee in that weekend series. Then to open up conference play, they have Cincinnati, West Virginia, Baylor, which is 3 relatively solid matchups for them, especially West Virginia, who's not as good as they were in years past. Then they get Arizona State, Oklahoma State, BYU, Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, close it out with Houston. It's not a horrible schedule, but it's definitely front-loaded, easier. Backloaded is a little bit more difficult. So if Arizona is going to want to have a chance to contend here in this conference, they got to get out to a hot start.
All right. Look, before we talk about their rivals, I want to let the good people know that the college baseball experience is, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Yes, we are. And SGPN's running a free squares pool for the Super Bowl. $1,000 winner take all for the final square. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/squares to sign up today. Once again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/squares. We're also brought to you by Edge Boost. Yes, SGPN's partnered up with Edge Boost, the premier Visa debit card for bettors. An Edge Boost card allows you to avoid the hassle of having your card denied at the sportsbook or DFS site or sweepstakes site or racetrack or casino. Plus, you can earn up to $750 per month in cashback rewards for using your Edge Boost. And your money is safe as the card is FDIC insured. The best part is no credit checks and it's completely free. Sign up today. Use the promo code SGPN. So you get better cashback rewards and instant tier 2 status. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. Once again, that's edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by mybookie.ag. Yes, MyBookie is your place to bet every single sport. Plus there's props for every game and the live dealer casino is a bundle of fun. MyBookie accepts customers from a ton of different locations as well. It's easy to deposit and they got lightning fast payouts using crypto. So head over to mybookie.ag. Use that promo code TCESGPN for 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Plus, they're going to give you a little $10 casino chip for free there just to get your beak wet. That's mybookie.ag, promo code TCESGPN. All right, we are back on the college baseball experience. We talked about the Wildcats. What about their bitter rivals, the Arizona State Sun Devils, as they also prepare for life in the new conference? They were 32-26 a year ago in the Pac-12, 17-13 overall for Willie Bloomquist, who's at the 4th season at the helm there, 90-81. So a little bit all over the place there. They took some major hits: Ryan Campos, Ethan Mendoza, Nick McLean, Harris Williams, Steve Ondina is gone. Connor Markle is gone. Thomas Burns, Ryan Schaefer, all these guys gone. They go out, in the portal. One of the great things I think, if you're trying to rebuild fast, is this transfer portal. Josiah Cromwick coming in from the Oregon Ducks. We've seen Oregon obviously have success before. Good program there. Kyle Walker from Grambling coming in. Matt King from the Roadrunners Meep of UTSA. Jonathan Hernandez is coming in from Central Arizona College. Manny Garza from the Rice Owls. Camden Bates from the Tennessee Volunteers. Circle that one. And how about bringing in freshman Brody Briggs from the Alaska Baseball League first team? Whoa. Didn't even know they Colorado doesn't have a team. We got shit going on in Alaska.
That's Jack League. He's a freshman. He redshirted last year. He's returning this year.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Not really like an incoming transfer, but interesting note there because he did have a good summer.
Gotcha. Jack Martinez also coming in from the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. And Lucas Kelly from McLennan Community College there in Texas. Bieniek, Sun Devils, they've over the years they've been good. Can they get back to where they once were?
I don't know. In my opinion, this is Willie Bloomquist's best roster he's had in his 4-year tenure and back home in Tempe. The bottom line is that a college baseball traditional power like Arizona State should expect to have a Pac-12 conference finish better than 5th in a 3-year span, and he didn't deliver on that. And this is the year, man. The lineup is veteran-led. The pitching staff is deep. And now you enter a Big 12 that lost its two biggest brands. One is the defending champ, and one was the bluest of all blue bloods. Sophomore southpaw Ben Jacobs is the unquestioned preseason ace for the Sun Devils here. He punched out 102 batters in just 66.1 innings. His low 90s fastball garnered a larger than 35% whiff rate. Following Jacobs in this weekend rotation, I think will be Raging Cajuns transfer Jack Martinez and sophomore Wyatt Halverson. Martinez held opponents to under 200 batting average last year with a mid-90s fastball and a changeup that drew a 45% whiff rate. And Halverson, he had a 7.82 ERA last year, but struck out 54 in 38 frames. So there's some potential here for a year two jump. In the bullpen, Lucas Kelly is going to be the first of many McClellan Community College transfers that we'll talk about today, entering the Big 12. And Kelly is probably going to be a leverage innings arm here, low to mid 90s fastball from a 3/4 slot. It provides a very interesting angle that they can mix and match with. Alec Ballardis redshirted last year, but he had a really good summer in the Pacific League. He only walked 2 hitters, struck out 26. And the last guy that I'll mention here is a lottery ticket transfer portal acquisition, Chance Tequila out of Campbell. On the Campbells in the 2023 very, very good team, Tequila went 9-1 with a 4.85 ERA. He didn't appear at all in 2024 due to injury, but he looks to finish his college career strong in some form or fashion, whether it's as a starter, whether it's as a reliever in Tempe. I think he's a very nice lottery ticket for these Sun Devils here. It could be a very good season, but we don't know how great of a manager Bloomquist is yet. And this is, a do or die year, in my opinion, for him.
I do agree. I think Willie Bloomquist has kind of brought his organization along. Listen, it's been tough sledding for Arizona the last 4 years, but like Noah said, this is the year. This is the year Willie Bloomquist has to make the tournament and not just make it. He's got to win a region. He's got to get to that super regional. And this team, even though they lost 3 of their top 4 hitters from last year, you lose Campos, you lose Compton, and you lose McLean. 3 guys with batting averages 340 or better. 3 guys in double figures and home runs. They keep Kian Vu. That's their prized offensive weapon. Was one of the best batting averages last year, 413. OPS just under 1,300, 14 bombs, double-digit doubles. They keep Jacob Tobias 322 average, led the team with 18 home runs. This is an offense that hit 102 home runs last year while batting over 310. They lose some of that production, but they keep their best hitter and they keep their best power hitter. And the thing about Arizona State, like Arizona, they seem to just recycle, replenish those guys that can just flat out hit. The question becomes, what do they do on the mound? Unlike Arizona State finally has a guy that they believe is a true ace. Ben Jacobs in a basically a contract year as a junior, draft eligible. This is a guy who, if you don't know about or you haven't started doing digging for college baseball for the upcoming year, this is a guy to keep an eye on for this summer, because as a draft eligible junior left-hander that has a lot of swing and miss against opposing batters, this is a guy we might be able to see claw his way into the first round, especially as a lefty. So here's my thing now. I like Arizona State this year. I gave out some of my preseason conference plays. The Big 12, I didn't really get a chance to do a full deep dive in, but I saw Arizona State at 8-1. It's since moved to 6-1. I felt that was too big. With the roster they have coming over, making the move, and just kind of the overall, I would say, disappointment of the other rosters in the Big 12, I felt like 8-1 for ASU is something that I felt to take a shot on. I think 6-1 is still fair. There's going to be other contributors in this pitching staff. Jack Martinez, you got Lucas Kelly. Chance Tequila was a very unsung hero for Campbell. This was a Campbell team that I felt in 2023 could have really made a run in the College World Series. Honestly, they didn't, but still, I think with all the weapons that Arizona State has, this is a team I have near very high in the Big 12 power rankings. Still worth it for me to take a shot at 6-1. Other than that, I don't know if they're going to have enough juice to make it to Omaha.
The outfield is very deep. They've got 4 guys that could start pretty much anywhere in the Big 12 right now. Brandon Compton had a great summer in the Cape Cod League. He posted a 903 OPS in 38 games there. The other guy that I wanted to throw out a shout out was New Contrades. He got hurt last year in the middle of the year, and it kind of deflated the balloon of the Sun Devils. They kind of came to a crashing stop at the end of the season, and he was a big piece last year of why that could have been. So
right, they keep him. They lost Campos. I'm sorry if I said Compton. Campos, and lose McLean as well. But there's going to be a lot of juice in this Arizona State offense, and I think Willie Bloomquist, like you said, Noah, this is the year for them. And quite frankly, like, this is a schedule that is very winnable. I mean, it's a little bit tough to start. They have TCU in Fort Worth. They have Kansas, who we both like. Softens up a little bit with Utah. Then they have Arizona, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, BYU, Baylor, Houston. They close out with Oklahoma State. I mean, that is not that bad of a schedule. It's a little bit tough in the beginning. So if they weather that storm, they kind of go through a lull in the middle of their season where that's the opportunity for them to get on a run. And then last week of the regular season against Oklahoma State, even though it's at OK State, that's still a winnable series. I mean, we're going to get into OK State more, but I think Arizona State's got a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities this year to make some noise.
All right, let's talk about the next team up, the Baylor Bears, just 22-31 a season ago in the Big 12, 10-20 in conference. Mitch Thompson, things haven't worked out when we came over from Pepperdine, if memory serves me correct. Third season, 42-66. And
Pepperdine was Sarlos that we'll talk about.
Was that?
Was he was
Thompson? Thompson wasn't it?
No, he was Fullerton. Thompson came from McLennan, the junior college that seems to be facilitating the Big 12 and the SEC right now. Gotcha. And he established that place into a power. They won a championship in 2021, and then he jumped to Baylor in 2022. He was an assistant at Baylor for 18 years prior. So,
damn, putting in the work. The Bears, they lose Daniel Altman. They also lose Mason Marriott and Colin McKinney. Those are some of the names they lose, but they go out and get Travis Sanders from the Texas Tech Red Raiders, their rivals. Just brutal. And then they go to Blinn Community or Blinn College there, JUCO world champs, and bring in Lucas Davenport, Jake Kokorst, Caleb Bunch comes in from the Demons of Northwestern State. Steven Stahl from McLennan, Bryson Bales from D3 Hendricks College. Bieniek, they returned some production, but this team wasn't great a season ago. Your thoughts on these Baylor Bears?
Yeah, I mean, Thompson hangs his hat on recruiting, and this entire staff. That's their kind of goal, is to recruit the Lone Star State, develop their talent in-house, and attempt to keep it there. The Bears only lost one notable piece from that offense. The pitching, though, needs to be revamped from a second to last finish in conference ERA. So some losses could be addition by subtraction, but one that's definitely not was Colin McKinney, who was their Friday guy. He's now going to be Arizona's Friday guy. In the offseason, Thompson notably poached Lamar's pitching coach, Sean Snedeker, and he had the Cardinals performing with the second best ERA in the country last season. So I think that is a sneaky, really good get. Bryson Bales and Ethan Calder are going to be the Friday, Saturday Southpaw punch. Bales is a D3 Hendricks College transfer. He had a 291 ERA and 21.1 innings on the Cape Cod League this past summer. He misses bats with a 3-pitch mix. Calder's a pitch-to-contact arm who had the best ERA on the team last season out of the bullpen. Stefan Stahl is coming out of McLennan. He has a good repertoire. Thompson recruited him there to begin his career. And freshman Brendan Bergman has a nice mid-90s fastball that could earn him some starts as well. I kind of like those two Blinn College transfers, actually. Lucas Davenport was the ace of that national championship team, and Jake Kolkhorst was the closer. So those two, alongside Northwestern's closer, Caleb Bunch, who had 14 saves last year, could make the Bears bullpen above average in the Big 12. We'll see. Johnny, how do you feel about the offense here?
Yeah, I'm not big on Baylor. I have Baylor as one of the worst teams in not just the Big 12, but one of the worst teams in the Power Four. I don't really know where they're going to go. Their offense, outside of a couple contributors, they didn't really lose much from last year on the offensive side. Enzo Apicado, that's their guy. That's their main guy. He batted .333 last year, 14 doubles. But you look at what they did last year. They don't steal bases. They don't hit home runs. They hit 42 home runs as a team, and they hit 273 as a team. I mean, like, that's their big thing, is they can hit a little bit. They don't have one guy at the moment, other than maybe a transfer they brought in, that is a 20 homer guy, maybe even a 15 homer guy. So I feel like offensively, they have a couple guys with Ty Johnson, Wesley Jordan, and Enzo. That's probably going to be their breadwinners again. I'd be, I guess, intrigued to see what kind of what in the transfer portal that they got that can provide some juice to this lineup. But I mean, we're talking about Baylor. I'm not really going to be betting on Baylor much this year. I'm definitely not betting them to win the Big 12. At that point, I would probably just like to see how bad they are and how we can take advantage of betting against them throughout the year.
Yeah, shout out John Khalifa. He's going through the schedule. Opening day matchup against Youngstown State. He's an Ohio guy. I know that. But I've got a buddy playing for the Flightless Birds from my hometown. Shout out Brett Stanley. He's a baller. He was batting in the 2-hole last year for them.
Yeah, hell yeah. Let's talk about the next team on the radar here is the BYU Cougars. Yes. 21-31 a year ago in the WCC. 7-23. Trent Pratt, guy have played at Auburn and Arizona State a long time ago. But he's a Utah guy through and through. Born in Salt Lake, coached at Dixie State, which is located in Utah. He's 61-68 entering year 3 here. This park, by the way, that they play at,
beautiful.
Oh man, I don't know who the hell was sharing this on Twitter the other day, but this thing was going viral. Larry Miller Field,
one of the more picturesque ones you'll find in the country.
I gotta hit a game there. At some point. Yeah, let's go. Let's get out there. I'll bring the booze though. Yeah. So BYU, not the greatest a year ago. They lose a slew of guys: Ben Hansen, Bryce Robeson, I'm sorry, Cutter Clausen, Mason Olson, Boston Mabus, Kia. How do I pronounce this guy's name? I know we mentioned it last week, right? Aloy transferred. Yeah. Colin Reuter also got. They stay active, trying to bring in some guys though, but a lot of the team is really returning. They brought in Utah transfer. Jeez, Jaden Harris. Don't they hate each other? Garrison Sumner also coming in from Salt Lake Community College. Easton Bryant from Chandler Gilbert Community College there in Arizona. He was an All-American there. And Ryder Robinson from the TCU Horned Frogs. So, but they returned. This is like Bieniek. I'm just off the top of my head. I'm just gonna hot potato you this. Is this the most returning production on any team in the Big 12?
I don't think so. I think there's one or two more, but yeah, returning production from 7-23 team last year might not be the best thing.
I guess there's only one way to go, though, right?
Yeah,
well, I don't know. You're jumping conferences. Maybe that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, they got slapped in the face by reality in year 1, in my opinion, jumping into the Big 12. And under Trent Pratt, the Cougars weren't good in the WCC either. Translated to a last place finish in 2024. This is a guy, it's a theme on the college basketball experience lately, but this guy was an interim head coach, and then he just got the interim tag removed after their longtime head coach had resigned. So Miller Field is a hitter's park. Naturally, BYU finished 7th in the homers department last year, but last in the Big 12 when it comes to runs scored. So you do the math there, they just didn't hit for average. That was the issue last year. Hopefully an experienced positional player group can aid BYU in being more competitive on that front. BYU's pitching staff is actually kind of backwards, in my opinion. I think the Cougars may have the worst weekend rotation, but a surprisingly might be average bullpen, as Peyton Gubler is a redshirt sophomore that might be the staff ace this season. He's got no starting experience, pitched to a 6.35 ERA in just 28.1 innings last season. Jaden Harris is that Utah transfer. He has 24 career starts under his belt, but he also carries a 6.75 ERA with a 3.09 opponent batting average against him going into Provo, Launch City. And then Garris Sumner is a Salt Lake Community College transfer. He was stellar last season, 1.82 ERA, but began his career at Utah, transferred out. Now he kind of seems like he lost the Friday job to the other two that I previously mentioned here. So I don't know what we got in him. And the weekend rotation is just very lackluster, but a handful of seniors in this bullpen might be the bright spot. Stone Cushing led the Big 12 in saves last year. Hayden Kuhn, Camden Dale, Jake Porter. They're a nice quartet with the inclusion of Braden Marks from Hawaii, who had a 4.0 record, 4.15 ERA last season with the Bows. The last piece in the arm barn that I want to mention is two-time JUCO All-American Ashton Johnson. He's a 5'11 lefty from College of Southern Idaho. So, yeah, BYU, they're going to get mashed early. And then if it's a close game late, they might be feisty with some offense. But I don't know. Not high on the Cougars this season. Johnny, how about you?
Yeah, same sort of sentiment as Baylor. I'll say this, though. Last year, BYU was fun. They had a couple of those, like – so for anybody that hasn't followed it, during the season, during conference play especially, you get Thursday night games, and most of the time there's like 2 to 4 Thursday night games on a typical Thursday. BYU, a handful of those times, was the late game, and they would play like a Texas Tech or they would play some average Big 12 team, and they were a big underdog. They were a 2-1 or bigger underdog, and they will pull it out. So I think I remember cashing a couple times either on their money line as a big dog on a Thursday night or their run line. So that was fun with BYU. But, I feel like BYU will probably be a little bit more competitive than Baylor, at least offensively, and it's not by much. The weekend rotation is a big issue. They had a couple, reliable pitchers, mainly with Olsen and Cushing last year in the bullpen. I think there's too many question marks for their starting rotation to really give any sort of consideration for them. It's not a team that I'm probably going to bet on much throughout the year. I think their offense could be okay. Easton Jones is their big power hitter coming back from last year, 14 bombs. I think if he can kind of get it back together this season, then, maybe he can lead the charge in BYU's offense a little bit. But, listen, these teams like this, I don't want to waste too much time because there's not going to be a lot of betting I'm going to be doing on them.
I want to mention one name in the lineup, I guess. Ryder Robinson, the TCU transfer. In 2023's freshman class, he was the number 1 recruit rated by PBR coming out of the state of Utah. He went to TCU, and if you know anything about that 2023 TCU team, Braden Taylor was the third baseman. They tried to play him at third base last year. They gave him 181 plate appearances, but bottom line, those were gigantic shoes to fill for a freshman. Now he's back at, home state. I think this kid might be a pick to click offensively for BYU this year.
All right, folks, before we get to the next team, I want to tell you the college baseball experience is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Yes, Underdog Pick'em is one of the biggest menus for all the sports, and the Underdog is always making it easier to win with profit boosting gimme pick'ems. Right now I know college baseball is not there yet. The season's a couple weeks away, but there's college hoops every single day. There's NFL, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and much, much more. You can now use specials and boost on all flexed entries. So sign up. And when you do, sign up with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com promo code TCESGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds. Look, you can sit back and copy one of the top-performing models from the leaderboard. You'll probably still make cash. I like to build my own, and then Rhythm will adjust around what I like. So check it out. I mean, they just had their brand new app drop, NFL picks, NFL props, college hoops, NBA. Rhythm has it all. Claim your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Right. We are back talking Big 12 college baseball. Remember to check out the ACC and SEC previews that are out as we continue on this journey. February 14th, opening day. Next up is the Cincinnati Bearcats, 32-25 a season ago. Jordan Bichelle, second season after coming over from the Chips. He was good at the Chips, right? Took them to the regionals a couple times, right?
Yep. He's a very good coach.
47 wins one season there at Central Michigan. That is getting it done. It's year 2. I mean, you come right into Cincinnati. They've been playing. This program's older than dirt. I swear. This is one that's been playing for a long time. But they lose Josh Cross, Josh Hegman, Hunter Jesse, Seth Logue, Brendan Garula, Griffin Hughes. But they were active in the portal. They bring back a lot of their hitting, but they're active in the portal, bringing in Donovan Ford from Newberry College, D2 ranks, Dawson Hoka from Lindenwood, the penitentiary, and then catcher Jackson Natili from Rutgers, as well as some other key transfers there. I think the big one there is a Central Michigan pitcher following him over, Adam
Racknish.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. I was about to sound very challenged. But I mean, am I crazy that we should be a little bit bullish for some improvement here on these Cincinnati Bearcats?
I'm very bullish. I'm a big time believer in Jordan Bichelle as a head coach. He's won everywhere he's been, whether it be NAIA with Midland, D2 with Northwood, or D1 with Central and Cincy. In 11 full seasons as a manager, Bichelle has only missed the postseason tournament 4 times. Central Michigan, Bichelle ended a 24-year tournament drought. He made 3 appearances in 4 full seasons. The only other time he didn't make the NCAA tournament, the Chips finished second in the MAC and didn't win the MAC tournament. I mean, literally to miss the tournament 4 times in 11 years at these mid-major conferences where you need to win your conference tournament, that's a gigantic feat. And Bichelle's teams, they have an identity. They hit for power, they cause chaos on the base paths, and they throw strikes. I think the Bearcats will check all 3 of those boxes this season a little bit better than they did last year. In year 1, kind of inheriting half that roster. Specifically on the pitching side, like I said, this staff is not going to blow anybody away, but up and down there is pitchability. This might be when it comes to their identity, they are the best pitching staff. Like I said, they're not going to tally up the strikeouts, but since he returns 2 starters in Nathan Taylor, who I'm a big believer in a sophomore jump for him, mid-90s arm, and Tommy Boba, he's an older guy, and they also added challengers for those weekend rotation roles through the transfer portal. None bigger than Central Michigan's ace from last year, Adam Racknish. The senior softball could have been drafted, but MLB team steered away due to a concern with his medicals last summer. So Racknish has 188 college innings on his wing to a tune of 188 strikeouts, so 1K per inning there, .348 ERA, 71 free passes in those 3 years. Kellen O'Connor is a 6th-year lefty from I'm struggling here from Cal State Bakersfield, and I think he'll have a good role with the Bearcats too. O'Connor had a .289 ERA and 81 innings last year with the Runners, adding a mix of arm angles in the bullpen that are just going to tally up strike after strike. Cincinnati is a tournament team, in my opinion. They're a dark horse to compete for a Big 12 title this year. I think 30-1 on Cincinnati to win this is tremendous value. Do I think they're going to win the tournament, win the regular season? No, I'm not betting this year, but do I think they're going to defeat the expectation of odds makers setting it at? Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good point here. Ultimately, Cincinnati is a team that I remember in the beginning of last year, Cincinnati was that team that they had a lot of those like eye-popping games where it's like, wow, this team's coming out with their hair on fire. They're hitting for power. They're causing a lot of chaos on the base paths. They can steal. They have pitchers that are now returning, 2 of their main starters. You got Rackfish, who was a guy who was a mainstay at CMU. So while it's not, I would say, world-class, it provides a level of continuity, a level of consistency. And I think sometimes we lose track of the fact that pitching, especially in college baseball and a tournament that's the Big 12 and it's not the SEC, it doesn't have to be first-round stuff. It just has to be solid. It has to be somewhat consistent. You have to give your team a chance to win. And, Cincinnati's offense quietly is one that was very, very contending last year. It was very fun to watch during weekend series. And I remember sometimes I was betting against Cincinnati because there was pitching advantages on the teams that I was betting. And I'm like, God damn, like this Cincinnati offense is pretty legit. The one bugaboo I would say is they're losing Josh Cross. That was their big home run hitter from last year, 19 bombs. But, sort of in to a lesser degree of what Arizona does. Replenish, recycle, get some more talent in there, get some guys that can swing the bat. And I think while Cincinnati's not going to be towards the leader in home runs this year, they hit 73 as a team last year. I think if they can be between that 70 and 80 range again, it's going to be kind of what Oklahoma does. They're going to get on, get over, get in by any means necessary. They have the guys coming back to steal bases, have good enough averages. While you lose Josh Hagman, you lose Josh Cross, there's guys that can step up and fill in. I don't think Cincinnati necessarily is going to be that good because I just don't think that the talent level is there. But I think as a team that won 17 games in conference last year, we could see them be right around that pace again. In terms of a future, Noah, I am with you. They could be a little bit feisty, but there's other long shots I'd be willing to take for the Big 12 to win it all this year. But Cincinnati is a team I will be keeping my eye on to bet in weekend series because when they face some of the better teams, they're going to be big underdogs. And especially in baseball, those numbers are very interesting. And let me say this right off the bat. I think I might eye them up. First game against Duke, February 14th. Adam Racktish comes back, assuming he's good to go. Duke's undergone some pitching changes of their own. So at the Duke Blue Devils, there's going to be some opportunities to take advantage of Cincinnati, maybe winning one game. So be on the lookout for the Bearcats this year to bet them at the big underdog price.
Carrington Cross. You mentioned the loss of Josh Cross with a K. Carrington Cross with a C is going to be a star this year. I drafted him in the fantasy league. I'm very high on this kid. Yep. I think he's going to be the catalyst of this offense that leads Bishop to his first tournament appearance with the Bearcats here. Like I said, this guy's won everywhere he's been and lumped Cincinnati in with the undesired road trips. West Virginia, Cincinnati, Utah, BYU. Not many people do want to go to the Skyline Chili Dome and take on the Bearcats. So, especially in April, I like Cincy a lot this year. I think they'll overperform expectation. And honestly, if you were asking me to list them at a price. I'd say 12-1.
I got news for you. The Carrington Cross, I like that prediction. I think that's a guy that can quietly get to 2020 this year. 11 homers last year. I think, considering a jump is in order for him as a junior, this is a guy that might be able to overperform yet again. I think 20 home runs, 20 steals. He was a few shy of that last year. This is a guy that could be 2020. And, let's go through it real quick since we're already on the subject. Conference-wise, they open up at Arizona. That's a tough one. But then they play BYU. They have UCF. UCF is another one of those tough Big 12 teams. Then they're at Texas Tech. That's not as tough as it once was.
Still not a fun road trip.
Arizona State. Then they go to West Virginia. Then they go to Oklahoma State, Kansas, TCU, Kansas State. So that's the one bugaboo. But like I said, even though their schedule is relatively tough and it's packed, and you got the best of the best in the conference back to back to back, there's going to be some of those opportunities to bet them throughout weekend series.
Curious what you guys make of the next team on the list, because the odds are the same for as Cincinnati here. The Houston Cougars, 26-28 a year ago, just 7-21 in conferences. Remember, they made that jump to the Big 12. Todd Whitting, though, 15th season, and you can't help but look at his history. Only three losing seasons in those 15 years. And one of them was last year, being 26-28. They lose, a good amount of production. Harold Call, Ace Reese, Justin Murray, Jonathan French, Cade Satelli, Kyle Lacalmetto, Duncan Howard. All those guys are gone, but they basically bring in an entire new roster from the hitting point of view. Riley Jackson comes in from Florida State. Connor McGinnis from Blinn. Cade Climby from Blinn. Aaron Lugo from Texas State in San Marcos there. Tyler Cox from fucking Dartmouth. Trey Broussard from San Jacinto. Malachi Lott from Sam Houston State. Jack Cooper from the Columbia Lions in the Ivy League. They get the 6-year pitcher Antoine Jean back. Bieniek, I'm curious your thoughts on this Houston team, because it's just kind of, I don't know that we've covered a team in all three of our previews where the entire almost the entire lineup is a transfer.
Yep. Yeah, they lost pretty much everybody from that offense a year ago, and albeit the pitching staff remained relatively intact, there's still some unprovenness to it outside of Gene. They did lose Jackson Jelkin, but he was battling injury from last year. He started the year as their Friday night starter. They finished second to last in the Big 12. The pitching staff finished in the top half of the league in the ERA, though. And I think they have potential to bump again this year. It starts with Antoine Jean. He's the 6th-year guy in the weekend rotation. But Richie Roman is a player that Coach Whitting is very excited about. Roman is expected to be the ace coming into his first full season off of Tommy John surgery. He's 6'4", 190, can pump in the mid-90s. And then the last spot in the rotation probably goes to 6'8", Paul Schmitz. He's a former D2 pitcher of the year. Or it probably goes to 6'8", Paul Schmitz, or former D2 pitcher of the year, Harrison Buechele. The loser of that battle is going to be one of the top options out of the bullpen, along with the returning closer, Diego Luzardo, and Alex Solis, who was another mid to high 90s right-handed arm, and he had a good summer in one of those summer leagues. I don't know how Johnny feels about the Cougs offense here, but I'm actually quite bullish on Houston not finishing second to last. I think they take a small step out of the conference's basement this year, and I love those Blinn transfers. Connor McGinnis is a bopper at first, and Cade Climby, low-key, has some big-time draft hype around him coming in. He started his career at Texas A&M, couldn't really get any playing time for Schloss and the bunch. blew it up at Blinn. He had a OPS over 1,000. That kid's going to be a star for Houston. And Aaron Lugo, I mean, shit, I'm still blown away by him blowing bubblegum bubbles and hitting bombs at the same time. Those pictures are incredible. But yeah, it's a grab bag on offense. On the pitching staff, there's relative grab bag as well. Johnny, how do you feel?
Yeah, listen, I think Houston was fun to watch last year. Jackson Jelkin was a guy that I really enjoyed watching. I remember very vividly in the Astros, or was it Minute Maid Park, with that tournament they had with Vanderbilt. Jelkin looked good, man. That's a guy that had some good stuff, and it's unfortunate that he missed so much time last year. But you're basically having to revamp this entire team. I do agree with you. I think the additions of Cade Clemmy, Connor McGinnis, like this lineup is going to be good, even though it's basically completely reformed. They have some guys coming back on the pitching staff. I think the problem is, though, there's so much variance. There's so much moving parts. And I know we've covered this the last couple weeks. There's only a handful of teams that can basically bring in half of a lineup or more than half of a lineup of transfers and newcomers and make it work as a plug and play. I don't think Houston is that team that can really make that jump. But I mean, there were 7 wins in conference last year. Can they be 10 wins? Small step above? Absolutely. I think for me, if we're comparing to Houston and Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati's got a little bit more of proven track record with their players, whereas Houston's relying on a lot of what ifs and a lot of new things to all come into play. I feel like Houston eventually in the next few years can kind of be a little bit more competitive, but in terms of 2025, I see them finishing well in the back half of the Big 12.
Let's talk about the Kansas Jayhawks. Maybe they can benefit from the loss of Oklahoma and Texas, because it's been since I think 06 or 08, the last time they won a Big 12 championship. 31-23 a season ago, 15-15 in conference for Dan Fitzgerald, who's in his 3rd season, just 56-55 in the, as he enters year 3 here after he came over as a LSU assistant. This one in similar fashion to Houston. We're gonna this will be a lot of portal reads here. They lose a ton of guys though. Reese Dutton, Ethan Lanthier, Evan Shaw, Tegan Kane, Jake English, John Nett, Lenia Ashby, Collier Crawford, Cody
Shohei Naga.
Yeah, Shohei Naga is gone. And they were busy. They were busy in the offseason, bringing in just a slew of guys. Max Solis Jr. from Chattahoochee Valley Community College. Daryl Osoria from Western Oklahoma State. They get Michael Brooks back healthy. He was out last season. Sawyer Smith, D2 transfer from St. Cloud State. Obviously, Dan Fitzgerald, former St. Thomas Tommy in the Minnesota area. So maybe you got some good intel there. Derek Serta comes in from Western Oklahoma State as well. Brady Council from Minnesota. This is what he knows. Jackson Hodge from Minnesota State, D2. Tommy Barth from the Buccaneers of East Tennessee State. Brady Bollinger from Southern Nevada. TJ Williams from the Heartland Community College there. And some pitchers too. I mean, Manning West coming in from Walter State, Malachi Vitak from the Blue Jays of Creighton, Connor Maggie from Gardner Webb, and Cannon Carr from Jefferson College. Bieniek, can they make it all work? I mean, this is the whole damn team. It seems like transfers. What do you make of the Jayhawks going into this season?
Yeah, you mentioned at the top of it whether or not they'd be one of the beneficiaries of Oklahoma and Texas leaving. Last year, they almost won the whole damn conference tournament. They were in the championship game. They finished the season hotter than anybody. It seemed like first time head coach Dan Fitzgerald is looking for his first winning season in conference here in year 3. And albeit there were quite a few important departing pieces, as Colby mentioned. I think this Jayhawks staff pounded the transfer portal, specifically in the JUCO ranks, pretty damn hard. They're going to be an older squad, so that's the one thing that you could take away from this. And they return the preseason pitcher of the year in the Big 12, Dominic Vagley. He's going to anchor this top-notch rotation. As a freshman last year, Vagley went 7-2 with a 3.89 ERA in 81 innings. He has a great 4-pitch mix with a mid-90s fastball that he's going to be able to shuffle to both right and left-handed bats. Cooper Moore is going to follow Vagley in the rotation after Moore led the Jayhawks in appearances last season. It's another power arm for KU that can mix in a slider and a change piece occasionally. Then stellar transfers Manning West, Malachi Vitak, Cannon Carr, Connor Maggi will all throw a bunch of innings this season. What roles? I don't really have a guess, but I think West, if I was held gunpoint and I had to give a guess, I think West is the guy to get the last starting spot in the weekend rotation. He led the Appy League this summer with 67 strikeouts. But I think all of those guys will be hits out of the portal. And if Kansas can get 6'8" Patrick Stites, who had a 2.16 ERA to begin last season, back from Tommy John this season at some point, that would be an unexpected added bonus. So Kansas, I have kind of in the middle of the road. I am quite bullish on the coaching staff after they had last year finishing hot, and they return a couple of important pieces on the pitching staff, one of the better starting rotations. So there's a ceiling here that I think is lower than some of the top teams in the conference, but definitely higher than the bottom half. I've got them just above halfway point in this league.
I Kansas is a team I really am intrigued about. Remember at the beginning of the conference play last year, TCU was coming off that Omaha run. Even though they lost a lot of guys, they were very highly ranked. They were number 3 at the time. They took a series from TCU that still had that 2023 Omaha pixie dust around them. Kansas doesn't have a lot of star power per se, but they do have a good team. I am intrigued by them this year, and I think their odds were longer than what they currently are in 20-1 to win it all. Like, I think Kansas has some juice to win it. Like, that is my long shot of the Big 12. If there's one team I would say that has the shot as a deeper team to win, it would be Kansas. I'm intrigued by the fact that they're older this year. I do feel like this is a kind of group that can absorb a lot of the losses they had. I mean, they lost pretty much their 4 best hitters from last season: Net, English, Shogunaga, Lenny Ashby. So it's a team that's going to be able to do a lot of the fundamental things correctly. It's not a team that's going to hit a ton of home runs. They're not going to steal a ton of bases. They're going to be an average in about the 300 range. But I think Dominic Vagley is a guy that I'm really, really liking this year. This is a guy that has a lot of Big 12 pitcher of the year juice about him in 2025. I think this is a guy that's not getting the kind of love in the overall space of the sport, but I feel like with the amount of maturity and the kind of transfers that they brought in, I think Dan Fitzgerald's going to have a team that's going to be really competitive this year. They're going to be a threat to make a lot of noise in this Big 12 conference. So, Kansas, I think at 20-1, it's worth a shot. First sprinkle for them to win the Big 12.
I thought you and Noah Darling had a little bit of a rivalry in our fantasy draft. I didn't know you were hopping all the way on his Jayhawks bandwagon here.
I'm not all the way on. I'm showing the love where it is. I don't have Kansas as a top 3 team in the conference, or even top 5 for that matter, but they're in the top half of the Big 12 for me right now. It's a team that I would definitely keep my eye on. A lot of good things happening out in Lawrence right now. I think the problem is, the reason for me, what's keeping them from being an even higher team, last year, and I think it's going to probably translate a little bit this year, is overall they're very inconsistent. One week they look like maybe the best team in the conference. Next week they go out and get swept. And it was kind of a revolving door like that. So for a team that wants to be in the contention of the best team in their conference, they have to be a little bit more consistent. And I think considering their schedule, where they start out with Baylor, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, UCF, TCU, a little bit tough in the front half, and then Kansas State, Utah, Cincy, BYU, West Virginia in the back half. So if they can play around 500 ball for that first month,
that's a friendly finish.
Yeah, starting out with Baylor. Baylor's a reasonable, realistic sweep candidate. They could sweep Baylor and play 500 ball for those next 3 or 4 series, and with the second half finish that they have, I don't know. I think Kansas can be flirting with 18, 19 games in the Big 12 if they stay consistent this year.
Let's talk about their arch rivals in the Sunflower State there. Kansas State, 35 and 26 season ago, 15 and 15 in conference, and Pete Hughes, who's been coaching for a good amount of time, but 6th season there in Manhattan, Kansas. But I mean, he's won 34 games, 3 or better, 3 out of the past 4 seasons in the Little Apple. And you look at this year's team, they obviously had a great run last year, but they lose a ton of guys. Kalen Culpepper, Brady Day, Brendan Jones, Chuck Ingram, Raphael Pelletier, Tyson Neighbors, Jack Owen Barama, Barima, I'm sorry. All gone, and they go out in the portal. Not as heavy as some other teams. They do return some decent production, especially on the bats, but they go get D. Kennedy from Texas, Maximus Martin, great name, from Georgia State, Shintaro Inu from West.
I think I don't know about that one
though. From Western Nebraska, Bear Matliak from Jacksonville State, great name. Keegan O'Connor from the Aqueduct known as Quinnipiac. Seth Dardar from Columbia. Carson Leggett from the Cards of Louisville. Jonah Reich from Eastern Arizona, and Michael Quivito from Nichols State, the Colonels there. I mean, he's kind of got the program pretty consistent over the past few years. I know last year was they took a big step forward, but they've been a winning program. Could they benefit from no Oklahoma, no Texas here? I mean, he used to coach at Oklahoma, right? Bieniek, your thoughts?
They very well could. I see a path for it. By the way, I on the sheet that we're using, I didn't mention at the top of the show. I didn't even get to the stats this week. I realized how many hours that I'm putting in on the sheet. I might open it up to the public for like $5 at the end of preview season here, so they can use it for use, and I can get a little bit of cash for the hours that I spent on this spreadsheet. But Sam Flores was their best hitter in the fall, and I didn't mark him as a transfer. He's out of McLennan. Surprise, surprise. Very, very, very good JUCO there. But I mean, this Kansas State team lost a lot of star power from that super regional team last year. I think the Wildcats under Pete Hughes can be that sneaky team that doesn't have any expectations this year, but they can tough out they would be a tough out each and every weekend in the Big 12 because K-State returns a lot of the glue guys that kept that engine together. Last year, they stumbled mid-year due to injuries. Tyson Neighbors was a big one. That was their closer. And Owen Barama struggled pretty much throughout the entire year. So, I mean, a lot of guys benefited from open time when some of these guys missed due to injury last year. And then that in result creates a little bit of experience for some of these guys that didn't play an entire year. And then they get to go on a crazy NCAA tournament run. They win the Fayetteville Regional. They go to Charlottesville. They play a Virginia team that was very good last year. And they held their own in that super regional for sure. This experienced pitching staff, I think, will be a strength of the team. Seniors JJ Slack, Jacob Frost, and Ty Rule are all destined for important roles, but maybe not in the rotation, which will make that Wildcat bullpen that will have James Guyette, who punched out 41 in 23 innings in the Appy League this summer. I think that bullpen might be a pretty strong unit. Blake Dean is back after a solid freshman year. He had a 4.72 ERA campaign. He's a guy that is a building block for Hughes this year and for next year. He's surrounded him with 2 incoming senior starting pitchers from the transfer portal. Carson Liggett, a guy that I loved during his sophomore year at Louisville when he was pumping mid-90s heat, 3.42 ERA that year in 71 innings. Nagging injuries kind of limited him last year in his ceiling in Louisville, but I think a fresh start could be great for Liggett. Michael Cavedo was Nichols' most consistent starter last season, as the wrong-hander only walked 21 in 72 innings. He had a 4.75 ERA. There's plenty of potential with the Wildcats for this roster upcoming for this season here. Experienced pitching staff. There's some talent in the lineup. Again, a lineup in the same way as the pitching staff. There were a little bit of experience that was created by injuries last year, but overall, I think Kansas State is a middle-of-the-pack team that could be sneaky because of that inherited experience from last year. Johnny, what are your thoughts on the lineup here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, anytime you lose Kalen Culpepper, I was a big fan of Culpepper. That he was him. That is the guy that was the engine of this offense, of this team, always coming up with the big play or the big hit, whatever the case is. So anytime you lose not only a guy with that kind of production, but the emotional leader, it is tough. But they brought in some guys, checked them out a little bit at Texas. D. Kennedy, pretty solid. And they get, the forever reliable Sam Flores from McLennan, Shintaro Inoue, Seth Darter from Columbia. So, listen, I think Kansas State, they're not a team that is going to wow you. Yeah, I know, great pronunciation, right? They're not a team that's going to wow you offensively. They had obviously the star with Culpepper last year, but I do think because they do a lot of the small things well, the little things, manufacture runs, it's a team that's going to have to take a step up in the pitching department to kind of pick up the slack. And you mentioned Carson Liggett. I felt a couple of years ago, he was one of the best Sunday guys in the sport when he pitched for Louisville. That was a guy I made it a priority every Sunday to bet Carson Liggett in Louisville every single Sunday. Now, the fact is you lose, obviously, Tyson Neighbors, you lose Barama, you lose a couple of these older guys. But, because it's an older pitching staff, you think those guys are able to do what I said before with Houston, just kind of be consistent, have that continuity. Pete Hughes is a great head coach, and I feel like Kansas State, even though they don't have the top tier talent, I think middle of the pack is fair. And honestly, that's a team that, given a lot of the veteran presence, can hang around and maybe make that second half run like they did last year. This team's got a lot of character, and in the big moments, they come up big, and they have a pretty good litmus test early on. They got the Baseball at the Beach was one of my favorite tournaments at Coastal Carolina with Washington Coastal, St. Joe's. They have the College Baseball Series presented by Cabada with Arkansas, Michigan, TCU down in Arlington, and the Frisco Classic with LSU, Sam Houston, Nebraska. But in terms of their conference schedule, they start out with Utah. They have Baylor. They have Texas Tech, 3 very winnable series. They go to Oklahoma State. They come home to play UCF. Then they go to Kansas. But after that, they have Houston, BYU, West Virginia, finish it off with Cincinnati. Not a terrible schedule.
That honestly might be the most favorable schedule you've listed so far.
Yeah, I mean, they were a 15 and 15 team in the Big 12 last year. Could I see it be something along like 16-14? Sure. I don't have Kansas State as a team that I'm going to be betting to win the Big 12, at least right now. I'd probably take more of a wait and see approach. I want to see how they do against some of these better teams out of conference before conference play actually starts. But it's a team that I think is going to provide some nice betting value throughout the year in a weekend series.
All right, let's jump over to a team that I think a lot of people do have as the favorites here, the Cowboys of Oklahoma State. How about them Cowboys? 42-19 a season ago, 19-9 in the Big 12 for Josh Holiday. 13th season at the helm. He's 442 and 220 or 236 all time. Their entire lineup is back, with the exception of Jason Jones coming in, the DH from Arkansas. They did lose Carson Benj. They lost Sam Garcia, Brian Holiday, Robert Kranz, Zach Earhart. But the pitching, they went out to the island. Harrison Bendendorf from the Rainbow Warriors coming in. Mario Pesca from St. John's, the Red Storm there, and Sean Youngerman from Westmont College. Bieniek, the whole damn team returns. I feel like with the maybe
that's why I didn't agree with you. Like with what was it, BYU or Houston, one of the two teams.
Yeah,
BYU, because they return 6 of the 9 guys from last year's lineup, and they're just gonna be bringing in. They're going to be aiding in some guys that didn't start last year throughout the program. This is a very good program when it comes to developing talent. And, every year Oklahoma State enters the preseason as one of the favorites to win the Big 12, if not the favorite. The Pokes have only won the league twice during Holiday's tenure, but they've never finished outside the top 4. They finished 5th once. Actually, I think that's wrong. I think it was 8th, but it was one finish outside the top 4. I apologize. So it's a very close but no cigar program. They'll get you sucked in if you want to buy all the way in on the Pokes. I've learned my lesson. But once again, they are the slam dunk best preseason roster on paper. And I know I'm cheating. Johnny's got the offense, but Nolan Schubert's my guy. This guy was supposed to be a Michigan Wolverine. Eric Bakich left, and this kid played summer ball with Jackson Holiday, nephew of Josh Holiday, the head coach, and Holiday swooped in and stole Schubert. So big miss there for Michigan, and ultimately Tracy Smith never really had an opportunity to keep him as a Wolverine, but the kid is a stud, and he's from the Orchard Lake St. Mary's powerhouse that has produced talent like Irish for this year's MLB draft, or Alex Mooney in years past, or Jack Crichton, who's currently on Clemson. Anyways, Josh Holiday and company have a clear type when it comes to pitching. They prefer behemoths with powerful riding fastballs. Literally, there are like 6 guys that are 6'6" or taller on this roster that Steve Lutz could easily pluck and place on this year's Big 12 basement basketball roster. Gabe Davis is the name here to know. He has a 4-pitch arsenal that will radiate high 90s heat from a 6'9" frame. But the excitement for Oklahoma State as a whole was a little bit watered down after he suffered a broken collarbone in the offseason. So he's going to have less time to build up. So that's actually probably going to cause Davis to be this year's closer. I think Hawaii transfer Harrison Bodendorf is going to be your Friday guy. Saturday and Sunday is going to be up to St. John's transfer Mario Pesca and freshman EJ Lund. Probably they're going to get the first licks on the weekend here. Bodendorf is a crossfire right-handed arm that's going to sit in the low 90s with a swing and miss sweeper, solid change piece. Pescia's my guy. I know Johnny is a Johnny's alum, but I caught on to them midseason last year, and honestly, that entire team. But Pescia is a 6'8", 275 monster. He's got plenty of potential in that frame this year in Stillwater. He had a 296 ERA in 76 innings in the big city there last season. Ethan Lund was a top 30 left-handed pitching recruit nationally this season, and he's going to walk through that open door of a rotation spot that was left by Davis. He's a 6'4", 210 left-handed pitcher, low to mid 90s heater, and a plus changeup. So I think those are your front runners for the rotation and your closer. But Sean Youngerman, Ryan Ewer, Hunter Watkins, and Stormy Rhodes are all big, tantalizing talents that could find themselves coming out of the pen often for the Cowboys. And I like what they have in Drew Blake as well. And I think they like Noah Weck as well. Blake is a junior left-handed pitcher who's going to fill up the strike zone. He's not really like a power pitcher towards their mold, but Weck was the second highest ranked pitcher out of Wisconsin in this year's freshman class. So lots of excitement for the Cowboys this season on the bump. Hopefully Davis returns to 100%, and who knows, maybe OSU will elect to stretch him out for the postseason, which if he's starting games this year, that only raises this ball club's ceiling. But I mean, right now on the national scene, that's kind of why they've been, outside the top 10 for mostly everybody. If he was in that starting rotation, no injury concern whatsoever, that's a solid ace, and I don't think there's as many question marks. But with that being the case, you don't have a single power conference starting pitcher for this year's weekend rotation to begin the season, and that is a solid question mark. But the lineup's going to be really good, Johnny.
Yeah, listen, OK State is a team that I have a love-hate relationship. They are a ton of fun to watch. Throughout the last couple of years, they've always have that guy, that Friday night guy, that ace that I love to bet on, but then they have those outings where it's like, all right, this is why I don't consistently bet on them. We're on Watts Brown, Brian Holiday, overall very good talents with great stuff, but like
Sam Garcia too. I think
Sam Garcia, but like it's like, all right, most of their times 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 to 9 strikeouts, and then they have those outings where it's like, all right, 3 innings, 8 earns, 4 walks, 5 walks, but listen, Oklahoma State, just fantastic program. We've witnessed a lot of classics, especially in the postseason in Stillwater. The reason why I'm not, I would say, as high on Oklahoma State in this conference race at 3-1 is because I've been here before. We've seen this movie before. They have such amazing talent. They have probably the most talented top to bottom roster on paper, but in the big moments, this team collapses. They got the pitching.
Swept going for a Big 12 title 2 years ago on their home field.
Yes.
So
they don't have the pitching. Their hitting disappears. They have guys that, I hate to say it, while they're great in the regular season, they like to swing for the fences too much. And Stillwater, if you don't know, it's a bandbox. Simple fly ball carries out 450 feet. A little bit of wind, bro, you're going to see some of these series throughout the year. You're going to see these totals that are in the 16.5, 17.5 range. The reason why I can't bet them is because of that inconsistency at 3-1. Like I'm gonna bet Oklahoma State throughout the year. And obviously it all starts with my guy Nolan Schubart. If you've been paying attention for these last few weeks, I gave out Nolan Schubart to win the Golden Spikes at 75-1. I could not believe my eyes. Now he's down to 20-1. I mean, Bet Rivers limits the shit out of me. I physically cannot bet any more money on Nolan Schubart. I physically cannot do it. I bet as much money as I possibly can that this book will allow me, because a guy that has maybe the most raw power in this draft, a 6'5", 230-plus pound Adonis, first-round juice, left-hander. This guy is off the hook. Golden Spikes-wise, this guy's going to be flirting with 400 average and 30-plus bops, maybe 35 bops. If he cuts down the strikeouts, I would be shocked if we don't see his name on that final 3 ballot. The other way, listen, Carson Bench, awesome, first-rounder. He's gone. You lose Earhart. You lose Lane Forsythe. No big deal, because this is what they do. They bring in all this talent. Offensively, they're going to be able to score runs. There's a reason why this team hit 118 homers last year. They're going to be right around that pace again. They bat 280 as a team. I see them probably batting around the same. Like what their numbers were on offense last year is probably going to be what we're seeing. And a guy we didn't mention is Braylon Brooks, the freshman two-way player, a guy I drafted on my fantasy team. I'm not sure about his status on the roster. But even though he's 5'9", he's got a lot of athleticism. And this is a guy that projects to be a key contributor here. Pitching-wise, this is where I run into trouble with this team. They have talent, but they don't have the guy. They don't have a guy that in the key situations gets the big win. But Mario Pesce, start with the St. John's guy. That kid is a boss from the Bronx, Italian behemoth, 6'8". Harrison Bodendorf from Hawaii. Hawaii had some guys. Gabe Davis, he was the big talk at the end of the season last year because of the kind of stuff his fastball had, running in triple digits. Ryan Urey, interesting as well. Southpaw, triple digits. They have a lot of flamethrowers. Why I can't bet Oklahoma State at 3-1? There's too much. There's always something that goes wrong with them. I'm going to be betting OK State throughout the year, like I said. But 3-1, no, I can't do it. And let me tell you something. I had a ticket on them to win. I bet late last year to win the College World Series. This team always finds a way to fuck it up in their own region. They had a gimme at home. Florida was a hand gift because their friends are on the committee. They had Nebraska. Like, this was Oklahoma State's layup to get into the Super Regionals, and they couldn't do it.
Florida had no pitching left. Oklahoma sitting pretty at 2-0.
Yeah, something always goes wrong with Oklahoma State. Great on paper, always the bride, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah,
not
that's why I don't have them winning the conference, just because I said it at the top with the stat.
Yeah.
They've only won it twice in Holiday's 13 years there. They've only finished outside the top 4 once, but they've only won it twice.
Let me ask you a question. If Oklahoma State was 5-1, would you bet it? Are you not betting the team, or are you not betting the number, or both?
I'm not betting the program, no. They've haunted me a little bit. So, yeah. The other thing is they don't have a proven power conference starting pitcher in this weekend rotation, though.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. So, I think offensively they're going to hit, even though they lost 2 of their 3 best hitters. You know, Schubert. I mean, if Schubert's the guy. I think we both expect him to be Golden Spikes level. They're gonna have a lot of hitters come in and pick up the slack of Benj and Earhart.
Aiden Miola is a nice Robin to Schubert's Batman, and Brueggemann is an experienced bat as well. He's been a starter for 2 years now. Yeah, and the Braylon Brooks experience, I'm very excited to see about that. But I like Brock Thompson too, the freshman shortstop. He's a bundle of fun.
I think you know what's appealing to me is Oklahoma State, though. They have like a weird schedule in spurts where it's like, all right, they start off easy. They got not easy, but they have West Virginia, who I would say is probably maybe right around top five, right outside, somewhere between like 6 and 8 in conference. Then they have Utah. Kansas at Lawrence, Kansas State at home, Arizona in Tucson. But then it comes home with Houston, go to Cincinnati, UCF, Baylor, and then they finish with Arizona State. So what I'm probably going to do in terms of an Oklahoma State bet, say they win West Virginia, which is reasonable. West Virginia is still going to be good because they're a good program.
Yeah, they won't fall off.
Utah. So let's say they start out 2-0 there. Their price might drop a little bit, but then they get Kansas and Kansas State and then Arizona. If they have a fall off where maybe they lose to Kansas, they win 2 out of 3 at Kansas State, and then they lose to Arizona, and there's a little bit of a pedal back, and you might get a discount where they're going to finish with Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, Baylor, Arizona State. I might buy back in on them after that Arizona series. That's where
you're just getting sucked in.
I'm not getting sucked in. I'm saying though, like if for anybody that wants Oklahoma State, like that's why it doesn't make sense to bet them now. If you're interested in betting Oklahoma State, and listen, maybe I might do that depending on what I like. But that's how I would approach Oklahoma State in terms of a Big 12 conference market.
Let's talk about the TCU Horned Frogs. Just a couple of years ago, had that magical season. Last year they were 33-21, 14-16 in conference for Kirk Saarloos. 115. He's entered his fourth season. He's 115-67 now. Logan Maxwell is gone. Curtis Byrne is gone. Peyton Chattinger is gone. Peyton Toll is gone. Ben Hampton gone as well. They do get healthier. Carson Bowen, Brody Green, Mason Bixby, all back from injuries. And then they did hit the portal some, bringing in Jack Bell from Texas A&M, no relation to George. Cole Kramer from Washington State, and Preston Gamster from Paris, Texas, JUCO, and Isaac Cadena from the Buckeyes of Ohio State. I know they're super excited about Noah Franco. They also brought in Tommy Lepore from the Shockers of Wichita State. Bieniek, can TCU recapture that magic from a couple years ago?
Why not? I mean, they greatly underachieved lofty expectations in 2024, but I think they reloaded on the pitching front. I think this staff has the most proven production in this league in the Big 12. Ben Abelt is the nastiest pitcher in the country, I feel like. He's a crossfire lefty who made 26 appearances out of the bullpen last season to a 183 ERA. He was nasty his freshman year, too, in the College World Series season. And he's going to make the transition to Friday night starter. TCU, they're hoping it kind of works out, just like Hagen Smith's transition from bullpen leverage arm into Friday night starter for Arkansas last year. Cole Klecker is still there on the roster after delivering on Friday nights week after week his freshman season when the Frogs dealt with many injuries and they went to Omaha. And 2024 was a step back for Klecker, but nonetheless, this is a guy we've seen be good enough to do the job before. Kirk Saarloos also went back to the Wichita State well after it worked out very well last year with Peyton Tolle. TCU this year grabbed power pitcher Tommy Lepore, who can pour it into the strike zone, upper 90s. During his freshman year at Wichita State last year, he threw 78.1 innings to a 4.25 ERA. That 1-2-3 weekend punch, I don't think can be compared to another team in the Big 12. Cal's Friday night starter, Trey Newman, is also currently slotted for buried in the bullpen, to be honest. He held opponents to a 236 batting average his freshman year, but I think Braden Sloan and Mason Bixby both flashed big potential last season. There might be higher than Newman when it comes to pure stuff. And I'm kind of excited to see what they can do in 2025. Caedmon Parker and freshman Trevor Baumler are also names that carry some weight here, and we'll need to find some innings. There's a lot of mouths to feed on the pitching staff, but I mean, unlike when it comes to basketball where there could be some inner turmoil, it's just you're up today, and I don't think there's like that kind of chemistry possible boiling issue over. But lastly, TCU's Fall World Series pitching MVP, Mason Brassfield. There's just a lot of proven depth here for the Frogs to go along with a lineup that should be just fine, in my opinion. TCU could be primed for a regional host type of season here.
Yeah. TCU, interestingly enough, it was a team that after the Omaha run, they lose Cole Fontenelle, they lose Braden Taylor. It was a team that was drawing a lot of expectations coming into last year. And often what happens is the teams that do really well the season before, to open up the next season, odds-wise for College World Series, they're usually at the top of the list, even though if it doesn't accurately reflect that. And that's kind of what TCU was last year. As a matter of fact, TCU is still relatively high to win the College World Series. I think TCU's got the pieces in place, but I think last year, at least to start the year, they kind of had a lot of those pieces, but they weren't executing. They were fumbling late game situations. I remember, you got to help me out. It was in Arlington, that tournament they played in. I forget who they were playing, but they had so many chances to win it. I think they ended up winning it, but like they blew 4 different leads. Ben Abelt was a disaster to start the season. They got the juice, but can they execute? I think Kirk Saarloos is a good enough coach where this is a season where he can rebound. Very excited to see what Noah Franco does, freshman two-way player. Heard nothing but great things about him. He was the fall MVP for TCU. Anthony Silva is a guy that I need to see the jump from. After the 2023 season where he batted .330 with 7 home runs and 11 doubles, like last year, that was supposed to be his breakout year where he's going to catapult himself as not only a first rounder, but one of the first shortstops off the board. Instead, he regressed, batted .268, struck out 42 times to walk only 26, only 4 home runs. So Anthony Silva, this is supposed to be his year. This is his team. So if Silva can make that jump and get himself back into that good graces of these MLB teams where he's possibly a first rounder because he plays shortstop or he's a top 2 rounder, then now we have a lot of juice to cook with for them because you have Sam Myers. Last year was one of their best hitters, came up in big situations. Chase Brunson, solid. Carson Bowen, he was one of their big leaders too, but because he missed some time with a blood clot, it throws a wrench into things. I feel like TCU's offense is not going to be one of the best in the country, but it's an offense that can provide timely hitting, key situations, and do enough to complement what's supposed to be a great pitching staff. Ben Abel moving from the bullpen to the starting rotation, mainly the Friday night role. I'm always weary about that. I know guys have done it before, Hagen Smith, namely. But the issue is the endurance. What does he look like the third time through the order, even the second time through the order? I know he got some extended work last year, but he does have the stuff for it. So Ben Abel, Big 12 Pitcher of the Year caliber, fine. Cole Klecker needs to get back to that freshman form after a letdown year. 2 very good starters. And then you bring in Tommy Lepore from Wichita State. I'm pretty sure TCU had success bringing in a Wichita State transfer last year. Peyton Tolley won Big 12. Trey Newman, I was a fan of at Cal. I think he showed some promise. So this pitching staff is loaded. This team needs to be a little bit more consistent on the offensive end. I think they will be fine. I have TCU in my top 5 in this conference. I don't know if they have enough juice to win it all per se, but listen. TCU at 5-1 is a bet that I think is worth looking into, but I want to see what kind of execution they have to start out the year because that's really my big concern. In terms of schedule, it is very winnable in the second half where they play Utah, Cincinnati, Arizona, Baylor, UCF.
I think they have the juice to win it all for what it's worth. I'm all in again on TCU.
Let's talk about
third favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No. Let's talk about Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. Historically, I know they've announced their NIL money situation, but where it's the
crumbs for baseball for what it's worth.
Yeah. But I mean, this is a team that has I think 5 Big 12 championships. Since the conference, I think started in 95, 96. So you look back at a season ago and they were 33-26, just 12-17 in conference for a longtime coach there, Tim Tadlock, entering his 13th season. They lose, Gavin Cash and Cade McGee, Kevin Basil, as well as Gage Harrelson and Landon Stripling. They also lose a bunch of pitchers as well. Kyle Robinson, Ryan Free, Josh Sanders, Jack Washburn, Zach Erdman. They did go to the portal and attack, somewhat decently there. Peyton Dr. Scholes coming in from the California Golden Bears. Kyler Thompson from Galveston College. Logan Hughes from Stetson. And Robin Villanueva from Tennessee. Jack Siebert from the Bulls of South Florida. Same with Logan Beavis, great name, from South Florida, as well as Tyler Boudreaux from Midland. Bieniek, does Tadlock, is he going to stumble because of that financial stuff, or is he just going to continue to roll and jump back and have a a better season than a year ago.
I mean, we kind of saw maybe a foreshadowing of it last year. They finished in 10th. I don't remember the last time the Red Raiders finished that low. As Johnny said, I think it was at the top of the show. Like this team went to Omaha 4 times in the 2010s. But I'm kind of selling this plus 700 price. I think is laughable, in my opinion. Texas Tech had the 3rd worst ERA in the conference to finish last year. And I'm going to be up front because Tadlock likes the pitching staff for this season. But, Tadlock's been one of the most consistent coaches over the past decade. But sure, maybe the depth of the staff is better, but I don't think the weekend rotation got any better than it was last season. And they lose 5 guys that threw more than 30 innings last year. Sure, it could be addition by subtraction, but I don't see much production coming in here. Mac Hoyer had a very solid freshman season. He's going to be the Friday guy. His fastball can get into the upper 90s, and he works off the slider. He works the slider off the number 1 well there. But number 2, number 3, Zach Crotchfeld and Jack Siebert in either order. Crotchfeld's 6'3", comes in from Auburn, low 90s. It's not going to blow anybody away. Siebert, I like him a little bit more than Crotchfeld. He made 27 starts over the last 2 years. So he's got some experience on the weekend coming in here. He's not going to miss many bats either. He only struck out 61 in 74 innings last year. It is a low 90s fastball, good slider in the upper 80s, but I don't know. You got Jackson Burns coming in. You have Trenton Parrish, who's a senior, who's got some experience in that bullpen, but I'm not really sold on the shopping carts of goods that Tadlock's trying to pitch to me. The offense could be a little bit of a different story. I see some pieces here that Johnny can talk about, but when it comes to strictly the pitching, I don't know if it got better. So they're really going to need to, light up the scoreboard this season to finish in the top half of the league, in my opinion.
The problem with their offense is they lost basically everybody. Gavin Cash, stud. That was a huge pickup for Texas A&M. His talent was being wasted here at Texas Tech. And it's a shame because Texas Tech has produced so many great players throughout the years. I mean, most notably, or most recently, I should say, you got Jace Young coming out first half of the first round. Well, I don't remember if he was 8th or 12th overall.
12th
a few years
Tigers.
He was 12th, right?
I'm not a huge fan, but yeah.
I know you weren't a big fan, but I was.
No.
But in any case, they've had a lot of juice, but they've lost so many guys, and especially considering what they had last year. And we're not even talking about Austin Green. He's gone. Drew Woodcox is gone. Kevin Bazell's gone. Gavin Cash is gone. Cade McGee is gone. Gage Harrelson's gone. So really their best contributors from last year returning. Damian Bravo, that kid's a stud. That kid rakes. Batted 380 last year with an OPS over 1,000, 21 doubles. They have TJ Pompey returning, 10 bops, 12 steals, 280 average, 905 OPS. Like those are the bread and butter guys that are returning. And then you bring in a Peyton Schultz from Cal, or you bring in a Robin Villanueva from Tennessee. And, listen, we've talked about this extensively. You have these guys that play at these unbelievable programs, but they just don't get the kind of burn. So you got a Villanueva from Tennessee who played sparingly. Now he gets a chance to probably DH every day. I think the offense is going to probably be okay at best. The pitching staff is interesting because you got Mac Hoyer, who was half decent last year, and you bring in Siebert from South Florida and Beavis from South Florida, and you get those guys that are the surplus of Texas, California, and Florida. Those guys can play. So I'm very interested in this pitching staff, and it was a point of contention last year, the pitching for the Red Raiders. I feel like Tim Tadlock being such a great coach and always finding a way to mix and match, the team is going to be in the top half of the Big 12, but I don't see them contending to win. Texas Tech is a team that I'm going to have a lot of interest in keeping my eyes on early in the year, considering where they start. They go to Chapel Hill first weekend, which is a great series. Then they come home to play UC Irvine. Then they got the Vegas Baseball Classic with Illinois, Texas, Washington. They have a weekend series at UC San Diego. They have a weekend series against Grand Canyon. And then it gets into the Big 12. So they have a lot of competition early. I'm interested in watching, but I don't think I like Texas Tech to do much damage in the way of winning the Big 12 this season.
Let's talk about these UCF Knights, 37-21 a year ago. They jumped from the AAC where they were tired of getting the tar kicked out of them by the ECU Pirates. I understand. And they jumped to the Big 12. Hey, but 14-15 year one of the Big 12 for Rich Wallace in his first season there at the helm. Yeah, that's I think better than most projected. They lose a slew of guys though. Zach Zista,
Ziska.
Yeah. Andrew Bright, Mikey Kluska, Danny Neary, Ben Vespi, Kyle Kramer, Spencer Bauer, Tyler Nesbitt, all gone. All right. But they go out, they do bring back like a solid amount of the pitching and a decent amount of the hitting from a year ago. They went out and get Kendre Maduro from Northwest Florida State, as well as Antonio. How do I pronounce this one? Is that an H or is that a J?
Jimenez, probably.
Yeah. From Miami coming in, and then Chase Cruson from the Duke Blue Devils. How about Eris Rivera from Polk College? They also get healthier as Andrew Sundin is back from injury.
Big piece.
Yeah. And Isaac Williams pitching, he's coming in from the Dolphins of Jacksonville, and Camden Wicker from the Terriers of Wofford. Can UCF continue to impress, Bieniek?
Yes, I think so. I'm pretty high on this UCF team this year. Colby, do you remember the name of Wiley Hartley, Campbell quarterback? I know you
do.
Like the FC.
I do.
He's their number 2 starter. He transferred in last year. He was very, very solid. And I mean, he made 14 appearances last year, 10 starts. He held opponents to a 223 batting average against him last year. But he's not the number 1, as Dom Stagliano, in my opinion, could have given Dom Vagley a hell of a run for a Big 12 preseason pitcher of the year, because I think I liked this guy a little bit more last season. He was only 3-4 because the offense wasn't tremendous, but 4-10 ERA, and he was 3rd in the league in WHIP, held opponents to under a 200 batting average against. This is a great fastball in the mid-90s, a really good changeup. So he's your ace. Hartley's your number 2. The number 3 here is Dom Castellano, who he's been a great bullpen piece. He's a lefty, so I think that's a nice addition to a weekend rotation. I mean, he made 22 appearances out of the pen. He very well could be another bullpen arm here. I kind of threw him in there because he was like the next best option for UCF, but they've got plenty of names on this pitching staff. Tyler Kozera, Grant Siegel are experienced from their freshman years a season ago. And in the bullpen as well, Isaac Williams coming in from Jacksonville. I think he's got a chance to be the closer here. Throws in the mid-90s. He was an important piece for the Dolphins last season. And Chris Sosnowski, Alex Galvin are also 2 important names here for the upcoming season. Sosnowski had 6 saves last year with a 3.38 ERA. And Galvin, was a solid arm for UCF last year as well. I think they killed it with some of these additions in the portal. Cruson isn't even going to start in the outfield right now, but he comes in from Duke. He's got loads of talent. He returned home. I think there was something with about family that really kind of made him transfer out of Duke rather than not enough playing time with the Blue Devils there. But I mean, Matt Prevesk, Andrew Williams, and Deems Ross are all kind of blocking him in a way. And Williamson could be a breakout stud this year for the Knights. And Sundin, he's so important to this team. Last year he got hurt and the offense just completely tanked. Otherwise, I thought they easily could have made the NCAA, or not the NCAA. They easily could have had a winning record in the Big 12 and possibly won another game in that Tallahassee regional as they upset Alabama. So UCF, I think it's a solid program. Momentum's going in the right direction under Wallace. And honestly, it was in a good spot where Lovelady left it. But he kind of got canned for heating up bats. So, Johnny, how do you feel about UCF? I think I might be a little bit higher on the Knights than you.
I like UCF this year. I think they right now would be middle of the pack for me, but have the opportunity to be approaching that top 5. I just talked about it. You get these teams that are not regarded as the better programs in their state, like a Florida or a Texas or a California, that just have so much talent. And I think for me personally, their biggest pickup was Chase Cruson from Duke. That was a kid that was coming on strong late last year. And with a lot of guys leaving Duke, he had an opportunity to slot in with AJ Gracia and Kyle Johnson as one of the big contributors in that lineup. And he chooses to leave for, honestly, a lesser program in UCF. But I got to be honest, man, I like this talent here. UCF always has a lot of talent, and it's a team that I've bet on a lot throughout the last few years because there's a lot of matchup advantages, especially when they're big underdogs. This is a team that has a lot of helium. But Andrew Sundin coming back, dude, that's a big one. 280 average, loads of hit tool, loads of pop. Matt Prevzik, big hit tool, 340 average last year. That's the guy that keeps the engine going for them. They don't have right now the guy that might hit 25 plus home runs, but they have a lot of guys top to bottom in this lineup that can produce. And the fact is, when you add somebody like a Chase Cruson, you're bringing back an Andrew Sundin, and you got Antonio Jimenez coming over from Miami. Again, another team where, he didn't play as much as maybe he could have because it's just such a loaded program. Typically, you have Kendry Maduro coming over from Northwest Florida State. There's a lot of talent on this offense. I feel like it could be approaching that top 5 territory. But the big thing is why UCF can be good is because they have a lot of, again, the key word, continuity with their pitching. Dom Stagliano, Italian stud, was good last year. You bring in Dom Castellano, lefty. You have all these guys that pitched last year and threw a decent amount of innings. So that counts for something in the next year. That provides that level of reliability. And I think the offense is going to be pretty good. I think this offense can be pushing top 5 best in the conference because of, a lot of different sources of production. This pitching staff, Noah, if it flirts as one of the top 3 or 4 best,
I think it could be top 3. I think it's the second best weekend rotation, top 3 staff.
I don't think either of us would be surprised. Like, UCF is going to have an opportunity to win a lot of games this year because they have good pitching. They have deep pitching, not only in the bullpen, but in the weekend rotation. And as we've seen in this sport, there's very few teams that have reliable, deep weekend rotations. You can throw a guy out there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you're going to have a chance to win. That's what makes it dangerous and great for bettors in a weekend rotation here.
Yeah.
I will say the one big loss on the mound that was a little bit disappointing is Ben Vespi. This is a guy that was a moneymaker overall. His overall numbers might not reflect the fact that he was probably one of the better pitchers in the Big 12 in the overall landscape last year. That's the one thing where it kind of concerns me. Where Hartley coming in, I haven't had a chance to see him pitch as much as you have, but the fact that you have likely Stagliano and Castellano bookending that rotation makes me feel good. I think UCF is a team that I have a lot of excitement for. I think they're a team I'm going to be betting a lot throughout the year.
Colby, we talk a lot about it for football, but for Big 12, this was like I mentioned it with Cincinnati, they could be a benefiter, and obviously you have Arizona State coming into the Big 12. But again, UCF, sleeping giant, Florida, golden recruiting grounds for baseball, this is a program without a Texas, without Oklahoma, who's been good under Skip Johnson. And if Arizona doesn't come to the forefront of this league, UCF's going to be the main benefiter over the long run. Because I don't think Bischel's at Cincinnati much longer if he does have success. UCF will be able to replenish a good coach after good coach. It'll be an attractive destination.
Here's one more thing I think now that we've kind of had a chance to talk about this and seeing the odds at 15-1. I think UCF is a team that I might actually end up taking a shot on now, and I'll tell you what.
That's
schedule wise. And I'm not saying UCF is going to win the conference. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to be very competitive and they're going to have a chance. But this is why, for anybody listening, we've talked about how UCF has a good roster. They have guys coming in, they have guys coming back, they have reliable pitching, they're probably 6-7 arms deep. Schedule wise, at BYU, home to Houston, at Cincinnati to start their first 3 weeks. That reasonably, in those 9 conference games, reasonably could be 7-2.
BYU in March is not a fun trip, but I do agree with you. Those are 3 reasonable draws.
But matchup-wise, BYU, a new team that we're not really that high on, 15-1 at that point. If they go 7-2 in those first 3 games, 15-1 then probably becomes 8-1.
It's going to shrink for sure.
Gets cut in half. So if you're going to bet them, you've got to bet them there. Then they come home, they play Kansas, then they go to Kansas State, then they play TCU, then they're home to West Virginia, then they're at OK State, then they're at Texas Tech, home to Baylor to finish it off. So really, it gets a little bit tough in the middle here, but we've talked about this. I don't think OK State's indestructible. West Virginia, they're good, but they're not unbeatable. TCU
and they dodge both powerful offenses from Arizona, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, they don't face Arizona or Arizona State.
UCF's a team that could get outslugged. I don't think they have like firepower on the offense, but if they dodge both Arizona and Arizona State and they don't go to the desert where the ball's going to fly, that's a plus.
The toughest matchups they have is at OK State and home to TCU.
Yeah, but I mean they probably lose that OK State series, chalk that one up as a series loss just for, the future and just add 2 losses, 3 losses, whatever it be. UCF, I think that's a great schedule. Good point, Johnny. And they were my play going into this show at 15-1. I was looking for a team outside of that top 3 that we'll talk about at the end of it, and UCF. My team.
I think this like the Big Ten that we're going to get to next week. I think there's going to be a handful of opportunities throughout the year because these are 2 open conferences. It's not like the SEC and the ACC where you have like 2 teams that you're like, I'd be very surprised if they don't win.
And if you dodge the big boys, then you're sitting pretty,
Yeah. And when you can pitch, a lot of things go your way.
You're more consistent if you're able to get some outs.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Let's talk about these Utah Utes. I know we don't have odds on them for some reason, but they were 33-22 a season. They go 16-14 in the pack. Gary Henderson's been there for a few years now. Year 4, 81-81. So the definition of average, they lose, Kai Roberts, TJ Clarkson, Carson Bodley, Randon Hoster, Brett Portham, Jaden Harris, but they go out in the portal. They're bringing some guys, Derek Smith coming in from Southern Nevada, who previously was at Oklahoma State, Jake Long from Santa Ana College. I've been to a game there. Santino Pinero from the UNLV Running Rebels, Dimitri Diamond from the Rambling Wreck of Georgia Tech, Dylan Gazaway from Lane College, and Mateus Conaway from Whitman College. So, I mean, they do return a decent amount of production. Bieniek, are these Utes something to note here?
Yeah, I mean, I did make you walk into a pothole there. Bryson Van Sickle is a name that you didn't mention that they lost. He's their ace, and I didn't list him on our master roster sheet here. So that was a huge blunder on my part. But other than that, I mean, yeah, they do return some production. And you mentioned it. I mean, Henderson's the definition of average. Because it's a benefit and to his detriment, because Utah in the Pac-12, albeit they didn't have the greatest talent last year, they did have an above 500 record, and they have been floating around that 500 record during his tenure. At Kentucky, again, another team that didn't have a boatload of talent in the SEC, they floated right around 500. But then you go to his 1 year as interim at Mississippi State, and boatloads of talent when you're talking about Hail State and 500. So, I think it's a low ceiling, but if you wanted to be bullish, you could put Henderson right around the 9 or 10 spot, because that seems to be where he gets his teams. But when we're talking about like strictly personnel, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. They do have Merritt Jones. He's returning from their rotation. He was actually drafted in the 20th round by the Twins. Didn't sign. He's going to be the Friday night guy. He's 6'4", 200. The slider is the pitch for this guy, but he did have a 5.66 ERA last year in 68.1 innings, and now I think the competition is going to be a little bit more steady, and the road trips are a little bit worse in the Big 12. And when you're traveling to I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but if you have a UCF or a West Virginia or a Cincinnati and you're the Friday night guy, we'll talk about this in a second. But I don't know. I think that might be a fade. We've never really seen multiple time zone travel in college baseball when you're getting out there Thursday afternoon and you're going on a Friday. I don't know how that affects your number one guy. Peyton Risk, he finished the year very well last year. He was a big time recruit out of Las Vegas. Dylan Gazway is another guy who made 17 starts at Lane Community College there. He's in this rotation. I think Coulter McAnally is the guy that I would throw in as like a nice piece. I haven't really heard if he's going to be a starter this year, but he's a sophomore now, and he's another 6'4", 200-pounder. 237 batting average against. I think that's solid enough. The trouble with pitching to contact in a way in Salt Lake City is that the ball will fly at altitude. There's some freshmen in the bullpen that could surprise. Jackson Elder, I think, is the big name here in the back end. Mateus Conaway from Whitman could deliver in a couple of important spots. He has 183 innings under his belt from Whitman. So Utah, again, not a super sexy pitching staff, but I do think that Henderson will be able to get quite a bit out of it. Johnny, what do you think about the offense here for the Utes?
I mean, the offense doesn't have a ton of juice, but the problem is you lose a guy like Kai Roberts. Not only was he a very proficient hitter, batting .356 last year, but he accounted for 33 of the team's 88 stolen bases. So anytime you lose a guy with that kind of production and that kind of spark, that's always difficult. And then you lose, like you mentioned, TJ Clarkson. TJ Clarkson was their leading home run getter with 10, a team that does not hit a lot of home runs. So maybe Jake Long from Santa Ana or Santino Pinero from UNLV can provide a little bit of spark, or Derek Smith as well. I don't know if the offense is going to have a lot of juice for power. I think it's a team that is going to have to steal a lot of bases. They're going to have to replace those 33 stolen bases left by Roberts somewhere else. So it's going to be a team that hits for a decent average. It's going to be a team that steals bases, gets on, gets over, gets in, nothing fancy. I think the problem with that is when you don't have a team that can slug or even be average when it comes to power, those kind of things, when you have an offense that you have to consistently have moving parts and move the line, which is difficult to do because you don't have a guy that can really take over the game with one swing of the bat. It requires a lot of moving parts, and it's basically like asking in football a team to go down and execute like an 8-play, 6-minute touchdown drive. Those can happen, and those are effective, but those are difficult to do game after game. When you ask somebody to do that, you have to have the pitching that is reliable. And when you lose Van Sickle, who was an absolute stud last year, he's one of the best pitchers in the Pac-12, that's a pretty big ask. So they're going to ask Merritt Jones to come out, who didn't really have a fantastic season last year. You're going to ask Gazaway from JUCO to come through. You're going to ask Colinelli. I'm not really big on this Utah team. I think the travel is going to play a big part in their schedule, and it's going to be very difficult to really compete in this conference. The fact that we don't even have odds on this team is a little bizarre. I don't really know.
A little telling as well.
Yeah. I don't really know if I'm doing anything with Utah this year, to tell you the truth.
I will say two pieces that I do like on the Utes offense. Core Jackson, shortstop, superstar for the Utes. And Caden Carpenter. Notable, he hit 954 OPS in the Northwoods League, and he walked more than he struck out. So two important pieces in the middle of that lineup. Who knows? Maybe they string together a couple of good days, and they could be live on an upset on a Friday night or something. But other than that, not sure I'll be playing much on the Utes either.
Let's talk about these West Virginia Mountaineers. Last season, that series I thought was one of the Carolina games. Whew.
Yeah.
Whew. Let's go talk about these West Virginia Mountaineers.
Morgantown, you'll always be home sweet home to me. Good old Morgantown, WP.
Randy Mazey's gone. Are we concerned just from the start? First the guy coached at ECU too, so I will give him his respect. But 36-24 season ago, 19-11. Now comes in Steve Sabins, not Steve Sable, Steve Sabins. Bieniek,
Not Nick Saban either.
Yeah, he was from West Virginia as well. They lose Derek Clark. They lose Tyler Switalski, Aiden Major, David Hageman, Hayden Cooper, JJ Weatherholt, Reed Chumley. They're active in the portal, getting some guys, but really they return like pretty much a ton of the production at the bats. Benjamin Lumsden comes in from UT Arlington. Jace Reinhardt from upstate of South Carolina. Chase Swain from the Jaspers of Manhattan. Pitching, they return a good amount of production too. Griffin Kim is back though. From is that?
All right. It
looks like an M to me.
Close,
yeah. Kern, my apologies, Griffin. D2 transfer from Quincy coming back. Ben McDougal comes in from West Virginia Potomac State College. What? I didn't even know that existed.
I don't even know if it's right, but yeah, that's what I read.
Will Sabins just pick up where the program left off?
I mean, there's a chance. First time manager though, that's always a hurdle. But Mazey was a pitching coach at heart, and man, oh man, is Saban set up with some power arms. I mean, I was reading some stuff on this pitching staff, and it's Oklahoma State junior for this upcoming year. There's a couple of monsters here. I gotta start with Chase Meyer, who this kid's 6'8", and just electric arm. He did have an 8.38 ERA, so that is definitely concerning. But on the Cape Cod. In the Cape Cod League this summer, he only had 10 walks in the 20 innings, and he was an all-star. So if you're going to be able to correct the ship during the summer when you get more of an opportunity and you're not really fighting for innings, there's a chance there. Sorry, Chase Meyer 6'2", not 6'8". I was confusing him with another guy we'll get to in a second, Robbie Porco. But Meyer, Mid 90s fastball, 2,600 RPM on that fastball. So it's going to get up on you quick with that inverted break. And this kid's a spin demon. I mean, a slider that's in the 3,200s, which is kind of unheard of. So scouts are really excited about Meyer. But Carson Estridge is the known name that a lot of people remember from that super regional team. He had a 3.21 ERA. He's going to be your more steady arm when you have the high velocity voltage Friday night guy who might give you a dominant outing, or he might go 2 innings and then it's a bullpen scramble throughout. But Estridge should be the steady one. He's a junior, so draft year, but he sits in the low 90s. He's a real pitchable arm. I think he's going to be a nice number 2. Number 3 is a little bit of a question mark. That's where I think Kern comes in. He's a D2 Quincy transfer, and he as well had a nice summer in the Cape Cod League. 2.18 ERA, 20.2 innings pitched, 227 batting average against. The bullpen, it gets a little crazy. Gavin Van Kempen, Robbie Porco, Ben McDougall, and Bryant Yoke all have plenty of potential, tantalizing arms, high velo. Like I said, they kind of, Maisie kind of left Sabins in a good spot with this pitching staff. And they have some returning pieces as well here, but they're not like the biggest pieces. I do want to mention a great name for you, Colby, that didn't make our sheet, JJ Glasscock. So a name there to
Great name.
keep an eye
Great
on.
name.
But yeah, couple of freshmen that will be development pieces and projects throughout the season. But let's talk about that offense with Johnny. I think this team is very similar to what I talked about with Kansas State on the offensive side of the ball. They lose their stars, but man, do they return some of the glue pieces. Johnny, how about it?
Yeah, the guy that I'm most intrigued by is Logan Save, 308, 8 homers last year. Very consistent, very reliable piece. Listen, anytime you lose J.J. Weatherholt, a guy who very reasonably could have been the number 1 pick, it's hard to replace that. And then you lose Reed Chumley, who was one of their best offensive producers. It is very difficult, but West Virginia has kind of had that mantra and that mentality year out over year where they bring in a lot of talent. And the good thing is, what West Virginia was missing J.J. Weatherholt for about half the regular season. So they still managed to get on without him. So in addition to Save, you got Brody Kresser, who was their biggest base stealer. You have Sam White coming back. You have Grant Hussey coming over from where's Grant Hussey come over from? He wasn't there last year.
He's played for Dub V for a little bit here. He has the all-time home run record at the school. So
12 bombs last year. So you have some guys coming back here. I think the pitching is always the thing with West Virginia. You had an absolute stud, balls of steel with Derek Clark last year. That kid did not give a shit what the pitch count was. 160, 170. He's like, Coach, I'm good. Keep me going. But anytime you lose a whole week in rotation, and he wasn't that big. Like he was relatively slender frame. But anytime you lose the whole week in rotation, that's really where the concern comes in with me. I know we address this with a couple of other teams that have to replace all of, if not most of, their starting rotation. So that's why I think West Virginia, for me, is it's a tough bet right now considering their price. But it's a team knowing how good they are and how resilient and how much adversity they always seem to overcome. It's a team you can never sleep on when you get to May and you get to June, because they're always going to give you a battle and they're always going to be a tough out, even when the deck seems stacked against them. But for West Virginia, I will not be looking at them to win the College World Series, nor would I be looking at them to win the Big 12. I think 8-1 is a little bit generous. If I was making the market, I would probably put West Virginia in the 12-1 to 15-1 range. I think this is kind of a perfect example of seeing UCF's number being a little bit bloated when they should be closer to where West Virginia is, and vice versa. While we have the last one here, schedule-wise, West Virginia starts with Oklahoma State and Stillwater. It's not loading for some reason, but sorry, give me one moment here. What the hell's going on?
I will say in the meantime, while he gets that loaded up, Kyle West, incoming freshman, he's gonna be 75-25 split with Logan Save, the other catcher. But they are super excited about this freshman here. Saban's with a wild quote in D1 Baseball's fall report, I think it was. Like, he threw a JJ Weatherholt in there as saying, like, best freshman since JJ. So, I mean, we'll see.
All right, I got it. Schedule. Start with Oklahoma State. Then they have Arizona at home. Then they are in Utah for BYU. Then they play Utah at home. They have Houston. They have Cincy, UCF, Texas Tech, K-State, Kansas at the close. So tough start, tough finish. Middle is relatively open. West Virginia is a team that I do anticipate making the field of 64, Noah. If their pitching can be half decent, they have a lot of juice and a lot of helium with their pitching, but the reliability and the consistency is something that remains to be seen. I probably peg West Virginia as a 3 seed. I don't know what you feel about that, but
I would probably agree.
Odds-wise to win the Big 12, I don't think so.
No. Before we get on to the predictions, we can move on from West Virginia, but Amateur Fun on YouTube had a great comment here. How can we take advantage of the travel schedule in the Big 12? I'll throw it to Colby first because, he's been doing this for years on the football and basketball front. Sure, the travel is more extreme than it's ever been, but, do you have any thoughts here?
I think in college athletics, and you're seeing, if you study the NBA and NFL too, we just saw UCLA's head coach Mick Cronin was talking about the travel that UCLA is doing in the new Big Ten, and he cited stats in his press conference regarding the NBA and NFL that traditionally when you're jumping 2 time zones, I don't think whether it's college or whether it's pro, it's normally not a good result. So that's something to pay attention to, but not only for the Big 12, I would say for the Big 10 and the ACC with Cal and Stanford, and I don't know baseball as well as football and basketball, but I just think it's in general, like your body clock.
Yeah.
So,
if you're looking at West Virginia here, for example, or UCF, who we just talked about, 2 East time zones, and you head out to Arizona State, Utah, BYU, and first pitch is at 10 o'clock. That's going to be rough.
Let alone the weather too. And you mentioned the weather, like Morgantown, West Virginia is cold on February 14th. I've been there, it's like some of the other places, Manhattan, Kansas, I think is cold in the
UCF UCF to BYU in March. I don't know if it's the easiest series in the world there.
Yeah. So those things all will matter, and that's something you didn't really see before. Maybe you could say, well, UCF was in the American and they had to go to Tulsa or something. But I'm saying most of these conferences have not stretched across the United States. It's a recent development. So I would pay attention to that. Johnny, do you agree?
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be even more interesting this year when it comes to the ACC with Stanford and Cal adding in. That travel's ridiculous. Listen, the travel typically is something that I feel like is it's tough to overcome. And you got a lot of these kids, they're 18, 19 years old. They're not used to this.
And they have school.
And they have classes. They got to deal with classes.
Especially Stanford.
Listen, professionally, I feel like MLB wise, we don't take it as much into account. Maybe here or there it can matter, but those are professional athletes. That's what they do. They're traveling all the time. They're used to it. And these kids nowadays aren't used to it. When you're in the Big 12, you're not really going that far. You're going either Kansas or Oklahoma, or you're going to maybe in a certain case down to UCF, down to Florida. It's not that bad, but now you have potentially Utah to Florida, or you have Utah to Oklahoma. I think the travel is something that I'm going to be intrigued to watch. And no, I know we did this last year, and you had a great point, and it kind of started to open my eyes, because it's hard to separate this in college versus MLB. And that's why betting trends and things to look out for when it comes to guys that are amateurs is important. But we did the Friday night thing last year. Game ones, home teams, especially in like the ACC and the SEC.
Yes.
It's a
first
big
3
advantage.
weeks, it was an ATM.
Yeah, it's a big advantage for the home teams. Now I want to kind of keep that thing going and monitor it this year for these teams that are traveling cross country. Like I want to make a note of Stanford, Cal, Utah, BYU, all these teams that have to do these ridiculous travels. I want to see how they perform, especially in the early part of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lull for the teams that have a multiple time zone jump.
Yeah, I think that stat was SEC road teams in weekend series. The first 3 weeks, it was like 3 road teams won the series. It was kind of crazy. I guess
Hagen Smiths. There was exceptions like Hagen Smith on a Friday at Auburn, which was only a 1-0 game. That kind of thing.
My short answer on the travel spots and whatever is the Eastern teams I'd fade on Friday nights when they're heading out west and they're starting at 10. And the Western teams, I think it's a pretty easy fade to do on the Sunday afternoon games when their first pitch is at noon, because they got to get the flight out of there and back onto the West Coast. First pitch will be at noon. Game will be 9 a.m. their local time. And they're going to be flying out to the West Coast afterwards. So those would be the 2 spots that are, at least I'm not firing automatically, but those seem golden to me.
To start.
And Joey Lobster. Yes, you can bet college baseball. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Johnny. Continue.
No, I was just going to say I want to see how sports books adjust that throughout the year. What kind of adjustments do they make? I think that's something that I would definitely give a shot at the earlier part of the year, because you might get some favorable odds. But then if the sports books start catching on to that trend, then it's going to be something where you're going to have to start making an adjustment yourself as a bettor. I know a lot of times in the second half of the year, the totals start to really get adjusted on Fridays when the better pitchers reveal themselves or the worst pitchers reveal themselves. And that kind of corresponds with the sports books.
Yeah, it's a big cat and mouse game.
All right, let's get to our rankings here, our projections on how the way the conference will go. Do we want to just rattle these things off like we did previously on the ACC and SEC, which folks go out and listen to those episodes?
Yeah.
I mean, it's already 2.5 hours. Let's
rip them.
Christ.
Yeah.
Johnny, do you want to you want to just let it go there?
Yeah. All right. Utah 14, BYU 13, Baylor 12, Houston 11, Cincy 10, Texas Tech 9, K-State 8, WVU 7, Kansas 6, UCF 5, TCU 4, Arizona 3, Arizona State 2, Oklahoma State 1. And the only reason why I'm keeping Oklahoma State 1 is because of the roster on paper. But bettability at 3-1. I've said it before. No, thank you. Arizona at 6-1 was 8-1 when I gave it out. That's still probably one of the best bangs for your buck in this conference.
Yeah. I'll let it go with 14 Utah, 13 BYU, 12 Baylor. We see eye to eye there. 11. I did go with the Houston Cougars. 10 West Virginia, 9 Cincinnati, 8 Kansas, 7 Texas Tech, 6 K-State, 5 UCF, 4 Arizona State, 3 Arizona, 2 Oklahoma State, and 1 the TCU Horned Frogs.
Ooh,
yeah, let's go. Recapture that magic from a couple years ago. Bieniek, what do you got? Fire.
I got BYU at 14, Utah at 13, Baylor at 12, Houston 11, Texas Tech at 10. I have them finishing the same spot as last year. I just don't know if their ceiling is as high as West Virginia at 9, Kansas State at 8, Kansas at 7. And then I really like my top 6. I got Arizona State at 6.
Oh,
I got to see Bloomquist do it, man. Before I put him into the top 5. I got Cincinnati at 5. UCF 15-1 is like my one value shot that I would recommend in the Big 12. I have them 4th. I think they're the best team out of the rest of the bunch. I think that top 3 is pretty ironclad. I like TCU at 3, Oklahoma State at 2 because they'll find a way not to win this conference, and Arizona at 4-1. I have them winning the Big 12 conference here.
It's going to be a lot of jumbling.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I want to do like a mid-season check-in. See how our projections are looking here. Folks, we'll be back next week with the Big 10 preview. Remember, the season starts February 14th. Subscribe to the College Baseball Experience, and also make sure you give everyone a follow on Twitter. Johnny V's on Twitter at _Johnny V TV. Bieniek is on Twitter at NoahB77 _ I'm on Twitter at DColbyD. The College Baseball Experience is on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. And don't forget, youtube.com/the College Experience. You can watch this show. We got uniforms and everything, right? Till next time, this is the College Baseball Experience. Make sure you check out the College Basketball Experience, College Football Experience, FCS College Football Experience. We got a bunch of great stuff over there. So check it all out. Till next time.
MLB Gambling Podcast. If you just like baseball.
Yes. How did I forget that? Right. There's just a slew of great stuff to check out. Also, don't forget to check out Breaking Bet, the Breaking Bet podcast with Johnny V here. Check it all out. There's a lot of great stuff there. Till next time, this is the College Baseball Experience, Big 12 style. You better start thinking about yours. And we out of here.
Run and shoot.